All right, dude, we're going here.
Fantastic.
Traye McCool.
Brian Wilson.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, I am loving this place. When I come in here, I want to be Brian Wilson.
Well,
That's
the
what
Beach
guys
Boy
are sitting
or
over there.
me?
No, you.
Okay, thank you.
Because you got your guitar collection, you've got your memorabilia, you strangle people unconscious for a living
Right next door. Yeah.
And that's it. You're living the life.
It is a weird situation.
Yeah.
Like
Give credit to who makes this all possible.
my wife.
She runs the show.
Like I will say things like all the time, like I don't do this for money, and she's like, yeah,
You better.
But luckily you have me because
Yeah.
you know I'm gonna make sure that we pay the bills and
Yeah.
ourselves and but you know too, like I do have a weird philosophy with how I think that we balance each other out well with how I run the business and think about the business and growing it. And it's weird now. I went to these trade shows in Vegas for 7 years total, and all of these people be telling you like you should do contracts,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next year some guy would be like, contracts are not the way to go, and I would be like,
Yeah.
that's how I feel.
Yeah.
And now it's funny, like the next biggest gym I know that you know, there's like we're in the top 3 mix. They stopped doing contracts,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
Is that biggest 3 where?
Little Rock, Northwest Arkansas, and then here.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
You're the 3rd biggest in the state.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
On square footage.
Okay.
And member count. Member count, we're like right up there in the mix
Mhm.
because we have over 450. Now, we do have a sizable yoga crowd and fitness kickboxing, but man, we have a lot of crossover, and like I describe it like that, members. I don't have 450 people doing jiu-jitsu or MMA.
Right.
But the kids, like we have 150 kids plus
Mm-hmm.
ages 3 to 17.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of little communities in there.
Yeah. It's funny to me how much MMA is just intertwined with philosophy.
Yeah.
The philosophical point you just said, to me, a membership is a sign of desperation. I need to force you to commit for so many months. When if you've got the good product, you've
Yeah,
got
it's
450
not a
members.
dollar sign. And did you ever hear of a grappler named Keenan Cornelius?
Uh-uh.
He was super famous. Like Gordon Ryan, who's just on Joe's podcast,
Mhm.
if you haven't listened to it, like really dethroned it. And they had an hour and 45-minute grappling match.
Yeah.
Sub only.
I was just listening to that podcast today.
Okay, yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. And he talked about Keenan on there, but you know, Keenan, you know, it's almost like being raised as a kid, right? Like you are going to become whatever, and in some sense, even if it's deep down, your parents, their values, their beliefs, they're going to bleed on
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
And you know, some of my coaches, and they would be like, I'd be asking them up on my come up, like, hey, how should I do this? How do y'all do this? And a lot of people do things like contracts.
Mhm.
And a lot of people view this very much as a business. I really did not ever get into this because I wanted to be like a bit like the business. It's like almost just got out of my control, man. Like my coaches moved to Northwest Arkansas, the gym I was training at. And then they eventually closed the other gym down like a year later. They kept it going. And it's like, oh, you either stop training or you start doing your own thing. I've been training long enough that time, like several years, is like I kind of started doing my own thing and like, well, how do you guys do things? And you kind of caught. But here's a big taboo thing, and this King Cornelius is talking about this, cross-training.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea?
I would say in general, good idea. For the same reason like that P90X stuff took off is because you don't want to get into a rut where you're just doing one thing. There's so many different muscle groups.
Well, that
Now, you
definitely.
talking about
But I'm talking
cross-training
about like
in MMA?
yeah. So let's say
Oh.
you're in Greenbrier,
Yeah.
right? So let's say I might you train a jiu-jitsu gym there, you know.
Okay.
I might, you know, trade like I want to bring some guys over and
Oh,
let's
yeah.
roll, have an
Yeah.
open mat at your
Yeah.
at your spot. And then some people or their coaches, so like somebody in my role, for example, let's say a handful of my guys just went to your gym and they,
Yeah.
you know, and your coach was cool about it.
Yeah.
But what if I wasn't?
That, to me, is a sign of weakness.
So that's you know, you have the best people out there now, and like on you know
Mm-hmm.
in the age of video and YouTube and social media, and they're putting this out, and you know, hey, like you can't control grown people paying you. Another thing, like, oh, you got to wear this color gi.
Or a gi at all.
Yeah.
I remember that was a fight in the early days.
Yeah. And it's some of it is like tradition.
Yeah.
I get that.
Okay.
And then some of it is like ego and narcissism
Right.
and things like that. Right.
To me, it's against the very idea of mixed martial arts, which is keep throwing more in the salad bowl to see what this can become. Whenever you're trying to say just stay here and train our way, you're not really fully bought into the picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing on that podcast this morning they brought up, and I had kind of forgotten this. Remember, the early UFC was style against style. It was not MMA as much as it was how can jiu-jitsu fare against judo.
I know, yeah.
How can a wrestler fight against a boxer, which is the age-old question, right? And something new grew out of that, which is, you got to be good at a lot of stuff. And that's one thing I love about MMA, and you talked about this before, like guys that don't roll like me still know a lot about the game, because I could see in the first few seconds Holly Holm was going to beat Ronda Rousey, and I moved to the edge of my chair. Like, holy cow, she's a better striker.
I remember seeing that. Blew my mind.
And I gave Dana so much credit for bringing Holly Holm in, a world-class striker, because that was the thing that Ronda had not really faced. Somebody who can outbox you. And then, by golly, the baddest woman on the planet got housed in 2 fights in a row, right?
Man, and has never fought again.
Yeah, that did it for her.
And has children now.
Yeah.
1 or 2.
She's left that world and gone over to professional wrestling. Are you going to join professional wrestling anytime soon?
No, but I might recollect like the old action figures from when I was a kid.
Yeah, I dig it.
I'm into doing stuff like that.
I've got to give you a compliment on the air from an unnamed fellow that you know who I'm talking about, who just started rolling with you. He's younger than you, and he said, like, I had to match up against the teacher, and I thought, I'm a good athlete, I'll use my speed against him. And he's like, I couldn't lay a hand on him. we're sparring, and he was like, how does he do it? He's like, he's a ghost. He said, I can't get a hold of this guy. I was dying laughing. It was so funny. Yeah. It really was.
It is fun. You ever hear Ed O'Neill talk about his first rolling experience?
I don't think I've heard him interviewed
with Horion.
Okay.
He talks about like getting Horion and mount, and then like getting bridge and rolled over, which is we did bridge and roll, and you were here, and you knew a lot about it.
Right.
But he just taught. I love hearing people share that experience of their first time rolling, or because really, dude, it shatters your belief system.
Yeah.
When I remember, my original first coach. And I mean, he hitting 150 pounds today, and he probably 6'1", 6'2", he's a little taller than me, but fought at 135, maybe even 125. Like, he walked around at 142 the whole time I've known him. But it's like, when I went in, I weighed like 205. Actually, I got up after high school to 230, dude. And fought as low as 155 doing martial arts.
Good grief.
But got in really good shape when I first started training. But like I would like train with him at that time. Like I fuck with him now. I'm like I'll say things to him. I'm like, dude, you're 8 years older, or I'm 8 years older now than you were when we first met. Like because he was like 28 years old, maybe even a little young, 27, 28. Was fighting, was really good, and beat the shit out of me. And I remember me and Nick Lyons, he was my best man at my wedding, like the tailback of the football team, Mr. Strong. Like, he's like, dude, you'd see this guy walking down the street and be like, I'm going to beat his ass. And he's like, but you're not.
Yeah.
and that's just it. Like, that's the stuff that starts going out the window when you, and dude, like, what's funny is, and at that time, jiu-jitsu in Arkansas was in a different spot. But he was a blue belt. They make memes about blue belts now. They're not liked in the community. All right, they're know-it-alls, and like it's funny. Like I have every time we have a meme message thread. It's called "Blue Belts Are Trash," and it's funny. Like, but like the whole community has decided to bully him. But dude, when I was coming up, a blue belt was like, "You're a blue belt?"
Yeah.
Like, wow. Because dude, there were 4 like. Almost, it's not rare to have 4 white belts in my jiu-jitsu class. Like last night we did. But, dude, there weren't 4 white belts in the state.
Yeah.
There were 4, exactly. And then there was a 5th guy that was in Memphis that would come down a lot, right? That was a white belt under my head coach. But man, now it's like I can't even tell you all the black belts.
Oh, sure.
There's like a bunch of people that are just like my rung of the ladder, and then people like I've been a black belt for like 5 years, dude,
Mm-hmm.
like or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like so long, I don't even really think about it.
Yeah.
Like I was trying to, like I was like, Corey, when did I get my first degree? Like, cause I got it a while back. I was like, was that 1 year ago too? Like, it just once you get it, you don't think of it. It's
Sure.
weird because you think about the colored ranks,
Mm-hmm.
and then you don't.
Yeah.
It's weird.
That didn't surprise me. Before we leave MMA, what do you think about Nick Diaz this weekend? Didn't Kazmat miss weight today?
I don't know if he missed weight, but there was that weird thing with the presser last night.
Yeah,
Well,
they got in a brawl behind the scenes.
yeah.
Apparently
Well,
it was big.
Well, okay, so that Kazmak, he said he was going to have like 20 people with him at the weigh-ins or something is
Yeah.
what I heard.
And Nick brought more.
Yeah.
Nate, I'm sorry.
Nate, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I saw some video of Nick and Nate like strategizing together
Mhm.
around at the weigh-ins, right, or the presser. But yeah, I wonder what all that's going to be about. And too, man, I don't know. It's I wonder if this is a good fight for him. I would have much rather seen him in Connor 3
Yeah.
or something.
Exactly.
And they're saying it's probably going to be his last fight. Like,
It's his last on contract.
yeah,
And he said very publicly, and I think he nailed it, like, they're throwing me to the wolves. They think this new guy's a killer. They want him to make a reputation off me. And there's more money in a Nate Connor 3 than there is in this fight, by far.
yeah, I want to see it.
Which doesn't make sense. I guess Connor turned it down, would be my guess. I don't know. But I think they're disrespecting Diaz a lot. He is one of the bigger draws, but whether or not he's top 5 in his weight classes are immaterial. He's one of the bigger draws in MMA.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done a lot, he and his brother, for that organization. He's made Dana a lot of money.
For sure.
And you're going to do this to him in his last fight. It's no swan song. It's no, give him a war with somebody because he won't quit, that he could stay with. This guy's exactly what Nate does not need to fight at this point in his career.
I know. That's not the fight I want to see.
And it's
Remember when Nate fought Cowboy?
Yes. Yes.
Dude, so like the most iconic moment in that fight, like the third round is about to start, and Cowboy's like the camera's on him,
Yeah.
and he's just like,
Yeah.
And then Nate's like pacing back and forth, flipping in the bird, just like, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. But man, that's the Sun Tzu psychological side. Like that guy wrote a book. There's a chapter about burning people alive
Oh my
in war.
Yeah.
It's like, but the whole Diaz presence is like a psychological burden for anybody fighting them. Not like in the same way like Conor versus Aldo.
Yeah.
But like that you're gonna get bitch slapped.
Yes.
Like
And
without a doubt.
I think they mean it. The reason I got into MMA, the early UFC I watched, and we kind of thought of it as human cockfighting, to be honest.
John McCain.
And then when it came back refined, I started watching again because of Nick Diaz. I saw like a 3-fight montage they did on Spike maybe, and God, he felt like he's in prison. And I was like, what
Nick
is
Diaz,
this? No, it was his brother.
Oh, Nate?
Yeah,
Nick, yeah, that's what's how I love Nick,
Okay. Dude, I was like, who is this guy? It's like you're fighting a bear.
Remember when he knocked Robbie Lawler out with that flappy hook?
In that 3-fight montage. Yeah.
One of my favorites with him too is a close fight. I kind of see it both ways every time I watch it. Carlos Condit.
Mm-hmm.
He hadn't fought in a long time, but came back. First time I saw it, I thought he won without question. And then after that, I was like, I could see it either way.
Yeah.
Like I rewatch it every now and then.
I've told you before, future of MMA, I think they need to educate us on the rules because I don't know what the point spread is or what the point system is.
It's the same point system as boxing. Like they have all the stats and stuff now, but we're still running off the boxing 10-point must.
But what is a takedown versus a submission, a failed submission, an escape worth? And
they don't rate any of that.
And so we have this argument after a fight sometimes of who won. And I don't know if that's wise. I don't know how to do it.
I mean, we have the technology. Like, they already are generating the stats in real time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there should be, like, honestly, I don't think judging for something like this even needs a human component, right? It's like, how many strikes did he throw? How many strikes did he throw?
Yeah.
Okay? Because you know how they have total strikes and significant strikes?
Yeah.
Right? But then, okay, strikes on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then like where everything like has point values.
Sure.
Right, and at the end, like you pump all the numbers in, and this dude got a 97%, and this dude got a 94.
Yeah.
Right, 97 wins.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense to me.
Sure.
And it's weird. I wonder where we'll go with technology because, I look back at some of the old UFCs on like Spike TV and stuff.
Mhm.
It's like when I was getting into it versus now. I mean, and like the camera and the quality. I still want them to have it earlier. I'm just sleepy at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I got you. Well, one of the themes I wanted to introduce today is like predictions about some of these things, and I'm going to apply for some jobs on your show. Like I should have Dana White's job. I think the UFC is vulnerable. They got bought for $4 billion.
4 or 6 billion, something a multi-billion.
Think of what that means. They have to make up $4 billion in investment minimum for their investors.
Mm-hmm.
You know those fighters are underpaid.
Yeah, for sure.
What if I'm Mark Cuban, whoever, a billionaire who wants to make a splash, start your own league and you do not start $4 billion in debt? You don't have to make up that much. And fighters only on 3 to 5 fight contracts. Within 2 years, I can have any fighter I want, almost, right?
Well, the speculation, I think, and I don't see this happening, but is that ONE FC.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know a lot about them?
No, I see the fights. I don't know anything about the organization and how it's run.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and it's like really, if you think about it, this is kind of the mob side of it to me. It's like you look at all of the competing organizations over time.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty much taken over by the UFC.
Yeah,
WEC, Strike Force,
right.
Bellator, like the
Right.
guy that UFC put in to run Strike Force, Scott Coker, got put in there to run Bellator.
Mhm.
And I don't know if he's still running it. I don't really keep up with Bellator, and I haven't really ever super kept up with them.
Yeah.
But it's honestly like sad too because that B and C league always just turn out to be the B and C fighters from the UFC,
Yeah.
almost always. And you'll have somebody go over that.
Twilight,
Yeah.
their career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like
a Cormier could fight now over there or something like
yeah,
that. Chael
yeah.
Sonnen.
You see that those old
Yeah.
what were they calling those for a while? Legacy fights.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed some of that. Getting to see Fedor and stuff, but. I just don't know how you compete with the UFC. They have so many things down that I think matter to the consumer.
Yes.
Namely, just the production value, the branding, the brand loyalty. Those are
TV
things like
contracts.
with ONE FC. Like to me, they're like, well, yeah, everybody's kind of saying they could be number 2, but you don't have a lot of brand recognition of them. You would think that the number 2, like
Sure.
I could say them, and you'd be like, oh yeah, did you see?
Yeah. Pepsi versus Coke.
Yeah.
You still know who Pepsi is.
That's because it doesn't have cocaine in it.
Yeah. I've heard that podcast. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. They looked it up.
Sure.
But yeah, it is. They are like the only company that gets a pass.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
And it's written in law. Like, how do you get away with that? They have a special legislation that says you get to import coca leaves and distill them and put it in your juice.
They said something else, like somebody else got an exception or something for some use, but it wasn't.
Can't put in soft drinks.
Yeah, like it might have been like dental or something or medicinal. I think it was like a medical college or for medical research or something.
Yeah. I want to thank you and throw a downer in this conversation. You're the one that told me about Jeremiah Story's passing, which gutted me. I was on the road with my daughter going to her orientation for college.
Mm-hmm.
I get it in the hotel room. I locked the door of the bathroom and cried like a baby. Like I was so upset. And the next day it was so surreal because I'm sitting in these meetings where these kids are climbing, right? These are bright kids going to this school and it's all about the future and taking off and we want you to love this college here. And I can't get him out of my mind and he doesn't get any of that, it was just constantly like a roller coaster for me of being proud of my daughter, watching her, and then thinking about Jeremiah, just the gut wrenching. For those viewers who don't know, he's a local jailer, college student that we both taught, that was killed in the line of duty when somebody smuggled a gun in the jail, an inmate, and managed to shoot him. And
this, I don't know if you read that. I read this in one of the articles, but it jammed on the first.
Oh God, no.
So, that's it. I mean, no one else got hurt because the first bullet that discharged when the shell ejected, it jammed.
Mm-hmm.
So no one else got shot, and he only got shot once.
Oh yeah.
Right. So a silver lining, if you want to call it that. But it was like when I read that, I was like, because I'd wondered, I was like, if you have a gun, you take command. Like I'm not just I mean I wouldn't just shoot
Yeah.
one person. I
Sure.
mean I kind of wondered. I'm like, well, yeah, he must
Makes
have,
sense. Yeah.
or I thought that he maybe had multiple.
Yeah.
But yeah, I read about it. Like it went off, and then they were able to detain him like immediately.
Yeah. But the obvious, the tragedy of it all, he was exactly what you wanted in your class. Somebody's trying to climb. Had the job that he was wanted to do law enforcement forever. He was also in the National Guard.
Yeah.
He would come talk to me about that all the time. And I got so many moments of that kid of like him doing something goofy, something funny, stopping by to talk to me, you know.
Always harassing me.
My favorite one was he used to challenge you to fight.
All the time, dude. All the time.
He's such a Southern boy. What do you think could happen if you and I fight?
And I'd choke you with my hair.
Yeah, and he'd be like, "Oh, I think I'd win." You know, yeah, Jeremiah, you're gonna beat a black belt and MMA instructor. That's gonna happen.
Yeah.
God, man, I miss that dude. And I didn't realize. And of course, you don't stop and think about it every day. You love your job, but at the same time, just how much that was gonna hurt. Oh my! I've lost students before, and it always hurts. But
That was just a senseless.
exactly. That's the word for it.
Yeah. And man, the more that kind of stuff happens, so let me tell you this too. See what you think about it. Like, so we're in this weird climate with like shit like this happens, dude.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that with Eliza Fletcher in
Girl,
Memphis.
yeah.
The Uvalde shooting, all all of this back to Sandy Hook, Columbine, Jonesboro back in the day. But
Sure.
but so it's now to a point where it's like where I went to high school, Clarksville. They have like a team of teachers that are armed and trained, and I know the guy that trains them, right? And I kind of like the way they do it, and they train them really well, right? Like and it's just like it's the kind of the people that already were into concealed carry that work there, and it's like they're a team of people. But this going back school year, I've got some teachers from there that train with me, and one of them works at the high school, and they said that this year one of the points of the training was they had to hear. They made all the teachers get in their offices or in the classroom. They had to hear what a bullet going off sounded like from their classroom, and blanks being. It is, but let me pose this one by you. Okay, so because I'm gonna tell you, the person that was telling me that had been traumatized by it. Right, like,
and they knew it was training when it was happening to them. So you're traumatized by a practice run.
Yeah. So, and then too, like, where's the data? Where's the data that says that's how we should condition the teachers?
Yeah, that's.
Should I rub you if if I'm telling you about sexual assault?
Yeah.
Do I rub your inner thigh? You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
like
yes.
and I see it both ways, and I'm actually pro the way they're doing it over there. And because like I mean I don't have a better answer. I don't think arm all your teachers, but like a select group or like a security force. I really don't have the best answers.
I think you do know though, because of what you do in the gym next door, that you can't practice this stuff theoretically. It has to be hands-on. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in. And I look at it as the bomb shelter drills they were doing in the 60s.
Duck and cover,
they
baby.
thought that was real.
Earlier.
I don't blame them for that. Fire drills, tornado drills, and in our world, active shooter drills, unfortunately, is now something that we're just going to have to own up to. Or you take your chances, and we'll be one of the school districts just lucky and it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But I would say my answer really comes from Army training. Because
you do. We've had this conversation before, actually.
Yeah,
you do have an interesting background and take on this because of that background.
Well, so when you're in training, your adrenaline goes to the roof. You do dumb things, and you know your life's not on the line, but you still hyperventilate. And that's the kind of thing that I think training helps you so much.
Control.
Muscle memory, control, and just understanding, like that teacher who's traumatized by the training. How do you think you're going to act when it's real? People need to understand, I'm going to shake. I'm going to hyperventilate. I'm not going to think clearly. And maybe training's the only way to get that point through to you. You need to know right now what you're going to do if. And a dude who's trained to think like that, we walk into a classroom and we start looking for exits. I know, how many steps it is to the door. And you know where the hiding spots are that I could potentially get into if I got no weapon and somebody shows up. And it's funny, I'll get veterans who'll come up to me and be like, have you ever noticed how vulnerable campus is? I'm like, yes,
Dude,
yes, actually. Yeah.
I brought that up in a couple of meetings, and they're like, "Shut up, Brian," but didn't say that,
Yeah.
But like cameras in the exterior stairwells.
Yeah.
That is something we had, like multiple assaults in the stairwell of the building I worked in on campus for 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and it was all in the same like little stint of time.
Mm-hmm.
But there were no cameras in there.
Yeah.
And it's like dark, and like these were like you would go into the building, then go into the stairwell, and then go up. And it was like 3 floors, and there were stairwells like that at maybe I think it was just 3 corners of the building.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that and so like when I started working there, I was like, I always walked up that stairwell, and it's kind of outside, but it's covered.
Yeah.
But there's not a camera and really good view of that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think the training does. That's why I'm in favor of it. That's why
Awareness.
Yes, absolutely.
And I am all in favor of awareness training. I think that with this sort of stuff, it's like we're having, because I thought about this a fair amount. Like Columbine happened on my birthday when I was a kid, right? Same birthday as Hitler, also.
Okay.
And 420 is that day, the same day as the weed smoking day. But yeah, so I thought about this a lot, and like haven't really come up with, well, what do you do? And talk to a bunch of people about it, and it's just like what the phase we're in right now is make it up as you go along.
Yeah.
And I've been in that phase
Right.
with like everything I do.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain point, I think we'll have data, and we'll have processes, and we'll have,
Sure.
and we're just in the weird spot where we're finding that out, and when I think we're also. I wonder what's going to happen with our laws surrounding this.
Sure. And what you'll probably get is a patchwork. Do you know different states can handle this differently? And richer school districts are going to have more resources than poorer, so you get a better answer in terms of equipment in some places. I think we're headed to armed guards on campus.
Should that be? So I thought about that,
Yeah.
and I like that idea. I like an armed security, but like the dispensary in Morrilton.
Mm-hmm.
They have armed security there.
It doesn't surprise me at all.
I get it. They actually that particular brand or whatever, Enlightened.
Mm-hmm.
They're the only people in Arkansas I've been to that have armed security.
Okay.
So, but too, the dude is not a nice person.
Okay.
He's on a power trip.
Oh no.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's the worst.
and carries a gun.
Yeah.
So, it took me about 2 times of going in there to like be like, oh, I'm never gonna be around you, dude.
Yeah. That's the wrong personality to get that, right?
Yeah. So it's like, you have like the security groups that are, they're hired to sit in the guard shacks, and from like I forget maybe there's one around here called Veritas or something like that. But so do you do that, or do you do, like we have school resource officers?
Yeah.
Do you do a team of, resource officer in school, and then you collaborate with the local PD?
Yeah.
Like, what's that look like, you think?
I would say local PD would have to train you, but maybe the school pays you, because I want them to be a licensed police officer.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. Instead of just, because I love my guns, you love your guns. There's too many gun nuts that are looking for a John Wayne movie, and that's the whole fear to me, of an armed populace, is the moron who starts shooting when he shouldn't. So I'll go, here's one you can get some hate mail on. What's the kid in Wisconsin? Just got off.
Rittenhour.
Yeah,
Kyle Rittenhour.
something like that.
Ricky Schroeder bailed him out of jail.
Yeah,
Isn't that weird? Like Newt from Lonesome Dove, man.
Yeah, Silver Spoons when I was a kid. He was on a sitcom.
Yeah.
Dude, we don't need 17-year-olds walking the streets with AK-47s. I don't care how you feel about the shooting and saying it was justified. I'm fine with that. I've seen the video. But just go back to, that's not really what we need. We don't need self-appointed vigilantes, because then you get armed.
Have you ever been around vigilantes before?
Yeah, my whole life. I'm related to them.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
We're in the South.
Man, when the George Floyd thing happened, I went to the protest. I live streamed it on the podcast.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And I just like, this is a scary moment. Like, I remember walking to the courthouse from, like, I parked at the city mall and I was walking towards the courthouse, and I passed somebody and they're like, people were up there with guns. And I was just like, what? And it was a bunch of, middle-aged white guys with, like, face mask on, tactical gloves, like holding, just like AKs. And it was a big group of them, right? And this was, some of these same people in this community were, like, guarding Confederate statues in Little Rock and stuff like that. And, but no, I mean, it definitely made me feel super unsafe. And, there were cops out there, but the cops weren't doing anything to mitigate. They're like, oh, no, they can do it.
No.
And I get that. But
Arkansas is an open carry state now. So you can stroll down the street like you want. But you said something that I find scarier. You can do it with a face mask on because of COVID. That was one of the fascinating things, kind of as a historian looking at COVID, is I can go to protests, because there was all sorts of BLM protests, January 6th, where you could actually argue that I'm okay to have a face mask on, so now I don't know who you are, and you've got a gun and you're standing in public. That, to me, is bizarre.
Well, yeah, the thefts I've seen, like pictures of people that were, had their mask on or whatever. But there's a funny meme when, like, the pandemic is just getting going. Like, I remember back in the good old days when you had a face mask on, it's because you're here to rob the place.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a weird shift.
How many criminals took advantage of COVID and went and shoplifted because they had a face mask on?
Oh, yeah, well, that too. But had you tuned in like 6 months ago or anything? I need to follow up on this because the shipping is still effed up.
Yeah.
Like with the business and like my suppliers, but there was all of these stories coming out about, like, the ports in California about how they would get the stuff off the container and put them on a rail car to go out to, like, the distribution centers or trucking centers, and they were getting, like, mass robbed. Like, the amount of boxes that were thrown out off of these cars on the, like, just as they were getting on the rail, like, covered up the rail like several feet. It just but that's a super interesting little side problem that's going on with theft. I heard Joe Rogan talking about this, like the number of criminals they released in California, I believe they said was 70,000
because of COVID. Wow.
And it's like that they were up in 30 days but I mean, really, there was almost like a weird decriminalization, like even in our own community, like, you could do some pretty effed up stuff and cops not gonna arrest you.
Yeah.
They didn't arrest the dude that was living in my shed.
It's just not worth their time.
And, like, man, the warrant list that the dude left his warrant in the shed was
stars.
You
need to frame that and put it on the wall. Yeah.
But I kind of feel like the pandemic made us a little soft on crime. Socially.
Oh yeah. It surprises me how many times I get surprised by the stuff that happens. Like when they said in D.C. you can't protest unless it's a BLM protest. And I was like, what? And then in Seattle when they took over.
What were they calling that?
Some sort of zone. Independent zone, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? That shows you a different culture. That would never go over here. Dude.
they bring the National Guard out, bro.
They wouldn't have to. The militia would clear it out before. The unannounced, unaffiliated militia would clear it out before. Because that's what scares me again about open carry going too far, is not the responsible gun owners. It's that dude who's a turd and is looking for this is my chance. Because Kyle Rittenhouse did it so I can get away with shooting somebody in public. And there's too many people who relish that thought. So when you go back to what the question you asked me about the resource officer, is I want it to be sanctioned. I don't want Blackwater in there doing it. I don't want some local, hey, let's anoint ourselves. I want training. Absolutely, that's a must to me. And like Jocko Willink says, like, police should get more training than they do.
He does have great views on this.
Sure. Training is the key to making less mistakes. And I love my guns and I love my friends that have guns. And I can't believe how many people tell me, when we had this debate about guns on our campus, it's a state law now. You can carry a gun in class. And people would tell me, students, I'd ask them, how you feel about this? Oh, I go to the range all the time. You've never had anybody return fire. You don't know how you'll react in a situation. And one young lady was telling me, like, I'm really good with a gun. You don't have nothing to worry about. And I said, luckily for her, her best buddy was right next to her, was the biggest guy in class. I said, but if he is not your friend and he's got that gun, what can you do? He's too close to you when he knows you have a gun. Now you've introduced a gun into a situation, and you could tell by the look on her face she had never thought about that.
Yeah, the situational scenarios.
For her having a gun in public is safe because she's going to be able to pull it and shoot. When you've never shot at a person before, you've shot at a piece of paper. And you've now introduced a gun into a setting that is shoulder to shoulder. The other chair starts right here in our classrooms. So are both of these guys good guys? Because he may be illegally, can't carry a gun legally, and yet you're sitting right next to him with 15 rounds in the magazine. There's way too many, life's complicated and people don't want to think of it that way. We like simplistic answers. There's way too many variables in this.
Oh, I know. And I talk with cops about this. Like, my head coach is a cop. McMillan, who runs the morning programs, chief of campus police, and has been law enforcement for over 20 years. And it's interesting, too, and military guys as well, but it's, just because they are, I grew up hunting, so, like, I was around guns all the time. Dude, I own 20 guns. Like, but I really don't go hunting anymore. I don't practice shoot enough. But, it's interesting, too. I think we've seen a shift, even in places like Arkansas. Like, it could be just like the narrative of the media, but, man, I know people that are just liberals that don't want me to have guns.
Yeah.
In Arkansas,
right.
In Russellville.
Right.
So it's like you get this red
right.
state, blue state different, but it is, like you said earlier, like I wrote a paper on this in college, like the differences in gun control by state is vast. You look at, places like New York and Arkansas. But I wonder what the future is, because nationally, and is it going to be one of those things like, well, federal government said this, but we're going to do it this way. States' rights.
I do think that, because how many sheriffs came out and said, I will not enforce that whenever there was some sort of regulation about COVID. We're not going to enforce that law. You can't, our system's really decentralized when it comes to law enforcement especially. Our government system's decentralized anyway in a lot of things. You can't enforce every single police precinct in America the same way. So
can't.
No, they're going to decide for themselves how it's going to be done. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you know who Tom DeBlass is? He's a jiu-jitsu guy. He's not a black belt under Renzo Gracie, but his coach is a black belt under Renzo Gracie. And, like, trained with Gordon and all those people. But he just became the official ranking jiu-jitsu instructor. He's in New Jersey, but of the NYPD. Law and order, baby.
Yeah.
SVU. He's going to be training Stabler and all those.
Yeah. Jumping tracks in my mind. There's a brand new video out. Apparently, Renzo got into a fight on
Oh, yeah, yeah. Did you hear the backstory on that?
The guy was telling him not to speak Portuguese. And
we speak, he's like, we speak English. And it's like, dude,
that's his story. I don't know.
How many languages are, but how many languages are spoken in New York?
Good Lord, yeah. All of them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so Enzo pins him and makes him apologize.
When you can see, like, the takedown, Mike just gets dumped. This dude, that was wild.
Yeah. And wrong guy to mess with on the subway.
Renzo is the nicest dude ever.
Is he really?
Like, I tell people this story, but I saw him give a talk at one of these Vegas things, and it was just like an inspirational talk. And it went like an hour and a half over. Like, they're like, hey, the next person needs to come in. He's like, no. Like, he's like, I'm in the middle of this.
Yeah.
But, man, it like just telling his life story, and it was so awesome. And then, like, after I was, like, going to go get my picture with him, and, like, I get up there to him, and, like, some dude he hadn't seen in, like, 30 years, like, kind of steps in front of me, and he was just like, oh. But then he looks at me, and he's like, Forza Jiu-Jitsu, I love. Oh, hold on, my friend. Oh, and he's like talking to this dude, but he holds my hand for, like, 30 seconds, a minute, and I'm just like,
What can you do?
This is crazy.
Yeah.
But then I saw him in Vegas for a competition like a couple years later, and we took a picture with him, and he hugged me like 4 times, and like side face cheek touched me when we were taking the picture.
Is that the one that's on the wall in there?
No, that's Hickson on the wall
Okay.
over there. But Henzo is cousin,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sad story. Hickson had a son that died.
Okay.
Hoxson. This was more than 10 years ago,
Okay.
15 years ago plus, something like that. And then Hickson like disappears for like 10 years. Henzo is who found the body in the morgue, unidentified.
Oh.
He had been there for a minute.
Mm.
So, yeah, tragic story about
Yeah.
that, because Hickson had Crone, and then this other older son, Hoxson, that was like, you know,
Mhm.
really good at jiu-jitsu,
Oh,
but
yeah.
apparently maybe he was murdered, maybe it had something to do with drugs. There's a lot of speculation around it. It's like, because it was a John Doe case,
Yeah.
and I want to say that maybe he'd been deceased for like 2 or 3 months
Oh gosh.
when Henzo
That's so
identified the body.
Yeah. If you're a Gracie kid, how do you tell your dad I don't want to do jiu-jitsu?
Well, first you got to figure out if your dad's Helio or his brother.
Okay.
Yeah, have you read or listened to Hickson's book?
No.
Dude, I mean, really, you could describe that family early on as a polygamy cult.
Okay.
They were like some of Hickson's cousins
Mm-hmm.
were raised as his brothers. There would be
Oh,
multiple
yeah.
wives in
Yeah.
the household, like having kids with the nanny, and then a wife in the household. Like it was, and Hickson
Little weird,
goes into that, yeah. Like Holes, this dude that died in a hang gliding accident. Hickson, he was his cousin, but he was raised initially as his brother.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. But yeah, they wanted to, take over the world with Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. They
Yeah.
had these sort of weird ideas about like, here's how we're going to do that. But I mean, how weird is it? It's like, I mean, I was just, and what's funny is the dismissal. Like I was like, it's because everybody's like, oh, the Queen died, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Great Britain, they still are like an empire. They're
Yeah.
still into colonialism.
Yeah.
I don't really care about their system at all. And I was like, and the Queen was married to her cousin, but they were just distant cousins.
Sure.
And I'm like, but man, you get into like the familial politics at
Yes.
the onset of World War One.
Yes.
Like everybody was everybody in charge of every country was the grandkid of the Queen.
Oh, Victoria.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, for your listeners, the Tsar
Sarnicki.
of Russia, Germany, and Britain are first cousins.
Mm-hmm.
That's an incestuous world. Call it what you want, but that's just a little too much power.
Have you been watching House of the Dragon? Sidebar.
No, I'm gonna wait until the season's out, and then I'm
You
gonna
binge it.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Good
binge it.
idea, dude. I hate having to wait. But then also we have Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power.
Yeah.
That's out on Amazon Prime now. 2
Yes.
episodes.
Yeah. And both of them bring it on. Now, if we're going to jump to that, let me, before we jump, let's talk about the Queen for a second. I learned one thing about her and all this, because you got to say something to your class, right?
You
I
do
knew
an amazing job about current events. That's
I
something I wanted to
try.
talk about.
When I heard about the Queen, I knew I had to say something to another history teacher. Her estate is worth $23 billion.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I would have guessed $2 billion max. Now, most of it is property, and they can't sell Buckingham Palace, so it's not liquid. She's got around $500 million in liquid assets. Is when she died.
Yeah, because I saw the new king, like
Mhm.
what his
Charles.
assets and pay, like what he had been getting paid,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, well, he's not that well,
Yeah.
but yeah. That's,
There's also, I don't exactly know how British law works, but the Crown is essentially like a corporation, and some members are fully partners, and some members aren't, and that's one of the reasons Harry and Meghan moved over here, is because since he's not in the direct line of succession, was not going to be in the elite of the royal family, and Harry was like, well, forget it, I'll go get a
Hierarchy.
reality TV contract, right? And there's only like 8 of them. I don't remember who all it is.
I saw the graphic today that
Yeah.
had the line
Oh,
of
really?
succession on it. Yeah.
Well, I can't remember again what the
Ascension.
language they use of who's like full partners in that British crown. And so, William is worth a lot more than his brother because of that. And when he becomes, he'll probably be able to bring Kate in, because I don't think she is part of the corporation.
And what do all these people do again?
Exactly. It's the best job on the planet, man. It costs the British government about $300 million a year. And every 10 years or so, a British politician will say, should we get rid of the monarchy? Because what really do they do? And the truth of the matter is the British people like it. It's a real relic. I guess it's their living Mount Rushmore or something.
Yeah, just the
They
tradition.
vote it
of
down every time. For $300 million, I'd throw them all on the curb and let's have a cookout. Let's use that money some other way. But she does have one power. I thought they had erased all of the Queen's power. She's a ceremonial leader. She goes to parades and does the wave and puts medals on Olympic winners. She can dismiss Parliament for 2 weeks, I think, at a time, and when they get a little too hot. And she did this once during Brexit, and that was like the first time she'd used that power in decades. She actually does have a political power. She did. Now Charles does.
Like a very slight check on things.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Because I've wondered about that.
Mhm.
With how much of it, since Cromwell.
Yeah. Yeah.
The traditions, and that's something too. Like I've been uber prepping this Enlightenment and French Revolution podcast.
Awesome.
Because I had both those classes, two
Yeah.
individual classes on that.
That
And-
stuff's so exciting. That's intoxicating.
it is, man.
Yeah.
And for both of them, I have the lectures recorded. I have a really good sets of notes for them, and I went into some of that, but I really didn't teach Civ 2 like the last 2.5 years I was there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be super pumped. Well, in sidebar about this too, there's a lady that's an expert on the Revolution and a little bit the Enlightenment, Dresden,
Mm-hmm.
and she was said she was seeing this doctor, and he found out that she was a historian of the Revolution. He
Okay.
was like, "So, are you a monarchist?" And she was like, "No, I'm for the Republic," or whatever it was she said. And he was like, "Oh, I'm a member of this party, and we like the king, and here's all the benefits."
Oh gosh.
But it was just, that's recently. That's in the last 15, 20 years the way she's talking about it. But that's interesting that the vestiges
Yes.
of those things
Yeah.
are so ingrained in our institutions and
Mhm.
systems, and I guess it's really a hearts and minds thing too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't understand their fascination with it. I'm sorry. I should care more as a history instructor.
Well, yeah, and it's so what do you think about this? And I don't know if he was the first person to suggest it, but Compromise of 1850. John C. Calhoun, 68, can't even read his own speech,
Mm-hmm.
has it read for him, and he's just like, by the way, we need two presidents, one in the North, one in the South, and they should have a veto. And this is really the way he was describing it and looking at a lot of and he's not Founding Fathers generation, but
Right.
that next one after is like, man, George Washington, the American Cincinnatus, they're all looking back at the,
Mm-hmm.
Athenians and everything. And I've wondered, that's like the way he is talking about that in that speech is like the Spartan system.
Mm-hmm.
That is how they had a diarchy,
Mm-hmm.
and each king could veto the other king. One king was more of a military king,
Mm-hmm.
and the other was more of a political king.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. But now, you look at the country on the other side of the Civil War, all of the territories we were arguing about,
Mm-hmm.
all of these larger population states that were still,
Yeah.
in California, New York. I wonder, how do we still just have this one ceremonial person?
Yeah.
Man, I think about this sometimes. Like my days are pretty overwhelming here sometimes still, even though I don't have a second job. And I'm just like, damn, how could I run the country?
Mm-mm. It's impossible.
It
That's an
really
impossible
is.
job. You know what? My heart of hearts, which is not going to happen. We would see the president as a corporation, and you're the CEO. And who are you going to get to work for you? Because that's the question. Who's really going to run commerce, transportation, military? Who's going to be your top advisor? I almost wish they had to tell us that in the campaign. And in political science, it's kind of actually considered ungentlemanly to announce your cabinet beforehand because you're saying vote for them, not vote for me.
What positions are in the Constitution?
In terms of cabinet? No.
Cabinet's not.
No.
But
It does mention advisors.
military, but ministers of war and
No.
none of that.
None of it. Yeah, all of it was made up under Washington. There was 4 initially, and we've expanded it to 15 now.
Wow.
And the 4 that are the top are still the inner cabinet: the state, defense, which was originally war, and what's the Attorney General called? Justice, and I'm missing one. Who am I missing? Treasury. Those are the big four. And the first in line of succession to the presidency if something happens on a big scale, right? So presidents can elevate or de-elevate positions depending on what they want, but some of them have a vice president or a national security advisor that's not in the formal cabinet that is more powerful than anybody in the cabinet, because that's who I rely on. There's so much in our system, and I think Trump exposed this. I know you probably don't want to talk about Trump too much.
Oh, yeah, it's fine.
But, dude, there's so much in our system that is not nailed down. There's a lot of leeway. And one thing that people, I think, underestimate, because we get involved in I love Trump, I hate Trump, and that's not real useful sometimes. So what so many people ignore is that he came in and was elected as an outsider. And he wasn't going to do things the normal way. And the Washington establishment were like,
no,
you have to do things this way. Well, he's like, oh, that ain't written down nowhere. I'll just do what I want to do. And so I don't know how people feel like that experiment went. Make your own mind up. But to me,
I wonder how it's going to go in 2024.
Oh, God,
that's what we should talk about. I do want to talk about that with you.
You'll have to get me some Valium or something.
Yeah.
Because I thought for sure Trump will go away. He's not. I thought for sure Biden was a one-termer. You can't run again. Come on, you're old and you're kind of losing it, dude. Hate to break that on your podcast, but he's gonna. I'm trying to think who the Democrats got.
Well, and two, let's just say this for people listening: like, we were friends during the last election, and you were not being like, "Oh, dude, I'm about to run out and vote for Trump." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And man, in this last election, like I heard Joe Rogan saying this the other day, is there a third candidate I could vote for? That would be better for me.
Well, there are options. And I do vote third party. I'll just say it bluntly. About 50 to 70% of the time, depending on what the year is, because I hate the two-party system so much. It's so entrenched. And, I'll insult them all. Why do you keep putting Pelosi up to Speaker of the House, Democratic Party? Give me somebody else to look at. Like the insider trading
She's
stuff.
been in there for so long, too. I was just seeing that the other day.
She really represent what America wants. And on the other side, give me somebody I can respect to vote for. And I don't have a lot of faith in them. If I got to choose, all of Congress would get fired, and we'd have normal people take those 535 positions. Give me a school teacher, a truck driver.
Yeah,
I'm dead serious. Give me a big town mayor.
Well, see, that was the big Joe Biden's big thing. Wasn't he a school teacher?
I think his wife is.
But I'm talking about.
Did he start out as a school teacher?
I think he did. Okay. I think because there's something when he was running with Obama. I remember about his story where I think it's like his first wife died.
Yeah.
Right, but way back in those times, like before he got into Congress, he was a school teacher, if I'm not mistaken. But then you're a career politician for 40 years.
Yeah.
And then you become absorbed.
I hate that.
Well, okay, so but it's systemic. What could we do about that?
Term limits is the only answer.
Term limits. What about this, though? I thought about this. Okay, so I'm 35, sadly, dude.
All right.
I think about this all the time, every day. I thought about today and yesterday. I'm like 35. So I feel like Joe Biden is too old to represent my interests.
Oh, yeah, there's no question.
If I was any younger than I am, that feeling would be more amplified. If I was 25, if I was 20, if I was about to vote in my first election.
Oh, yeah.
So, but also, I'm not. I mean, one of the things that does make this country great is the diversity of it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what about my grandparents? I do have one grandma still alive. But now my dad's getting it up in his 60s. Like what about them? Like who best represents them? Is their representative? And you take somebody that's 85, they might not feel like a JFK.
Yeah.
40-year-old Catholic dude or whatever is the best representative of them. But that's something I've thought a lot about. It's like you don't want to be ageist.
And I am. Yeah.
I mean, we can. Yeah, I mean, I kind of am too. Like but
by the time you
McCain, Biden, like everybody that has been getting out there is in the upper echelon. I think even Bernie.
Bernie's ancient. He's 80, maybe.
Yeah, I think if he will be 80 in this election is what I heard the other day.
Okay,
something.
But if you were supposed to retire at 65, we all kind of have that number. Why should you be running the country 15 years after that?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Now, I also like a little bit of experience. I don't like 35-year-olds running the country, even though you could as president. That's the constitutional limit. I kind of want somebody who's 60 to get that job, and I want you to retire from politics by the time you're 70. I would be okay with some sort of idea that you need to leave at a certain point.
I meant to look this up the other day because this hasn't happened except for what was it? Garfield served non-consecutive terms, one and then off, and then another one.
No, it's Grover Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Yeah.
Okay.
Only president to do it.
Alternate universe, Trump gets reelected in 2024.
Okay.
Can he serve 2 terms?
No,
Okay.
It's 2 forever.
Okay, I didn't know if that was consecutive or 2 total period.
2 total.
Like if it was broken up, if there was like a loophole with that.
No.
Because what that wasn't even made a law until after FDR, right?
Right. It's the 25th Amendment. And people need to read it.
1940 was that?
No, I'd say about 53, 54
Okay.
it passed. And it was meant it was a Republican Congress meant as an insult to FDR. And what I'll never forgive them for is not the insult to FDR. They didn't term limit themselves. Mm-hmm. If you're going to make an argument that you shouldn't be in office for more than 8 years, 8's not a long time, right? I'm fine with it. President 8 years, I'm fine with that. But then they can serve 40-year terms. You didn't put a 10-year limit on yourself, a 12-year, 20-year limit on yourself. Strom Thurmond's in the Senate for 50 years. Like, that's ludicrous. Now, we do it to ourselves. We're the voters that are idiots. But that's always been the disreputable part of the 25th Amendment to me. It specifies, I'll throw it out there, that you can serve more than 2 terms if you serve part of someone else's term, but only if it's less than 2 years. So if Biden dies in office, forgive me, and Kamala Harris serves, as long as she serves less than 2 years, she could get elected twice.
It was like LBJ, yeah. That would have been that with him.
Yeah. But if you serve one day more than 2 years of somebody else's term, you can only get reelected once.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so LBJ just like narrowly would have fallen in, like, because it was like 1 year, 8 months or something like that
exactly.
he was. Okay, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we'll never have a president serve 12 or get elected 3 times, but you could have theoretically somebody serve 10 years, but not a day more. The non-consecutive thing is kind of interesting, and if it's only happened once in American history, you got to say it's a long shot. But I think if Trump runs, he is the Republican nominee, because if they don't nominate him, he's going to run as a third party and blow their party up.
Oh, that's going to do weird things.
He's got them over. Leverage is all his. He's got them bent over a barrel right now.
Do you think? Well, I mean, dude, this is like the type of election with like LBJ. Like, what is the Democrats? Okay, so 1860, you had the Democrats split and they ran 2 people, and that's ruined their party in that election.
Blew it up.
I mean, are we going to see something like that? Could we see something like that?
Sure.
Do you think Biden is for sure going to rerun?
No. Here's what I don't think. I don't think Biden knows he can't run again. I think he's the only person in the country that thinks he's a viable candidate. I've always joked, and I kind of mean this, there was like 6 people excited to vote for Joe Biden. The rest of his 70 million votes, whatever it was, were people who didn't like Donald Trump. It was an anti-Trump vote. It was not a pro-Biden vote. So he came in weak. He is not the kind of candidate that's inspiring. I'm sorry, but that's just not his personality.
Well, what's his vice president been doing? I don't see or hear anything about her ever.
Well, let's be honest. He got her to bounce the ticket, and that was tokenism. And I don't think that he's ever really serious about sharing power with her. I do think, like, Obama gave Biden some power. I know Trump gave Dick Cheney power. Clinton gave Al Gore power. And I say gave because the Constitution doesn't give the vice president any real job except for calling the Senate to order in the morning. That's the only thing it mentions. And most vice presidents don't like doing that because it's boring, so they leave and let somebody else do it. So the job's defined by the president, and I don't think, you go meet third world leaders. That's what you do, and wait for the president to die, which actually might be important when we keep electing octogenarians up there. But that's who have the Democrats got if it's not Biden? I thought they would use this 4 years to develop a bench. It's not going to be her. She's not a ticket headliner. She is the opening act, right? She's just there to bounce the ticket. So who is it for the Democrats? And I don't really have an answer for you. Warren's too old. Bernie's too Bernie. Like he'll run again, but he's too old and he's not going to make it. I think my guess is Pete Buttigieg is the guy that they might elevate. The Democrats will never run 2 white guys again. They're going to balance a ticket. They're going to have some diversity on it. And to have the first openly gay presidential candidate nominee, if he gets that, I think might be something that's going to happen. But, I don't even know much about Buttigieg's politics. There's so many more people in the country that I would like to see throw their hat in the ring. Maybe not for the presidency, but even then, like, you know, I liked Yang last time.
Yeah,
A lot of
I
folks are
did.
trying
Yang
to-
was who I was thinking about when you were sitting here talking about that.
Lots of folks like to draft McRaven, the Admiral, to run, which I would like to see him talk. There's plenty of people.
Okay, what celebrity do you want to run?
Oh, my God.
The Rock or Jocko? Like, who
Sure.
you got? Both of them?
No, I mean, Rock wants to. He's saying things on the side. I asked my class this when Trump ran. I said, okay, this is historical. We've never had an outsider with zero political experience win the office. He's never won.
Yeah, because Reagan was governor of
Yeah.
California.
Absolutely. Most of them are governors or senators. The one thing that people might argue with me on that is some generals have won. The general is a political office.
Especially earlier on.
You're dealing with a lot of bureaucracy. You're dealing with a lot of Congress all the time.
When's the last time we had a general in?
I guess it's Ike, isn't it?
Well,
Eisenhower.
it had to have been, yeah.
Plenty of officers have joined. Like the next 8 presidents after World War II are all World War II veterans, all officers, through George Sr. And then Clinton's the first guy who's non-military background to win
And
the
George
office.
Sr. with the CIA, too.
Yeah.
Jeez.
He had a great resume. That dude had a great
Like somebody said this to me, is a professor friend of mine who moved to Nebraska, a sociology guy, but he goes, imagine the stuff that died with him. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
secrets.
Iran-Contra. He
Yeah.
pardoned 7 people, 3 of whom hadn't been charged for anything with the Iran-Contra scandal. They're just walking down the street and get handed a presidential pardon. If that's not covering your ass, I don't know what is. So we'll never know the full truth there. And there's, you know this because you love those dirty little stories the government sweeps under the rug. You know how bad that was.
Well, too, you know, so Thurman,
Yeah.
like his whole thesis is built around these ideas that,
Mhm.
like, our faith is eroded in our institutions, and we're
Yeah.
sitting here taking repeated jabs at like things that we don't like.
Sure.
And it's like that's a sentiment that developed because of how our government deals with controversial
Mhm.
stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like the Warren Commission
Yeah.
or
Yeah, which-
whatever.
And I think it's also a function of the internet. There were conspiracy theories 50 years ago, but not everybody could see it all at the same time. And what the public is realizing is something historians have kind of known is we can't really give you 100% truth very often. Unless you're standing there when it happens, you don't know what happened. I love to make people think or try to make students think. Remember Kavanaugh, did he molest or assault the young lady?
Yes.
Can't remember her name, the blonde lady.
Mm-hmm.
I would ask my students, like, have y'all made up your minds on this? And then I would tell them, you don't know. You weren't in the room. We don't know the truth. We're all making up our minds what we think the truth is.
Based off of circumstantial evidence or
2 people in the room know what happened, and possibly a third, because she said Mike Judge was in there too. And I said, so 3 people on the planet actually could have knowledge of this. The rest of us are just guessing. And that's the truth. And the public is kind of figuring that out now as you get this stuff, and you never get 100% truth, and who do you trust? That's the fascinating thing about the revolution of the internet, which is one of the biggest revolutions in human history, if
Well,
not the biggest.
Think of that. The back Joe Rogan was saying this because of the Zuckerberg podcast. I don't
Mhm.
know if you listen to that,
Yeah,
but it's
most of
like this is just all of this age we're in is a giant experiment with
Yeah.
social media
Yes.
and I think that we're just like I've talked with Jeff Woods about this. Like the digital age is going to allow us some luxuries, like get to the bottom of things quicker.
Mm-hmm.
But then too, the like what we're saying, like we'll figure out how to, guard the schools eventually.
Yeah.
They'll figure out the best way after
Mhm.
we try a whole bunch of different stuff. I feel like we're in that phase, and I mean, like look at how rapidly. I remember in like 2015, it was like Facebook and Twitter, but Vine was really big.
Mm-hmm.
Like Twitch did not exist, but there was Periscope.
Yeah. I
Right.
remember MySpace.
Yeah, oh,
Right.
dude, Zanga,
Yeah.
MySpace, like, but all the stuff that's come and gone, and then it's like, but you look at the bigger ones, Twitter, Facebook, that have kind of stayed. But then it is like a new form of media. Like they just changed a bunch of stuff on Facebook mobile.
Mm-hmm.
And like how I interface with my business page and
Okay.
switch back, it's weird because now I'm all the time accidentally looking at the timeline for the gym,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm seeing tons of stuff I don't normally see, like
Yeah.
gym stuff, more Joe Rogan stuff, but it's kind of weird too, because like they hadn't
Yeah.
figured out the algorithm. Then I'm like, oh no, I want to go back over to my page and
Yeah.
look at that. But I just like, man, I think that we're still figuring it out. I've seen a lot of social media come and go, and Zuckerberg said on Joe Rogan's podcast that Congress made him hold that laptop story.
I know that's something, isn't it? Or asked him to.
Yeah.
And who is it? The
Or no,
FBI?
it's FBI. Yeah, sorry, not
pushed
yeah.
back on that. They were like, that's not exactly what we said. So
Yeah.
I need to go read what they said. The another thing about all that with social media is the rate of change is so fast. Like there's a new bombshell every couple of years that changes the way we do things. Amazon Prime shipping, Facebook's only 15 years old. And imagine the impact it's had.
Yeah.
How much changes in our future, and doesn't that make this weird thing called truth a little bit less trustworthy?
Well, it's like we're all having the same experience at a certain point too, because like I was in a bookstore in Denver a while back, and I was like checking out. I bought a boxing book. They're not over there, and it was an awesome used bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
And at the counter, it was like these are the bookstores owned by Jeff Bezos, is what it said. But dude, it went deeper than I thought. Like Abe Books, like basically anywhere I have ever bought books or that we would go shop for books, that dude owns.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Well, yeah, and I mean Audible. That's the other one, right? So like, man, I'm always jamming audiobooks, always. And but like it just like maybe Kindle too. Is Amazon behind Kindle?
Yes. No, so they debuted it.
That. So I don't do Kindle a lot because the screen reader is a little too robotic sounding. But because I like the audio, it's like if I'm gonna read it, I'm gonna just read the page.
I was thinking about that for you. You need to put out a Brian Wilson's reading list. Not just.
I know. I'm gonna do a blog. I've got it set up. I just have not ever posted to it. But now I have time.
10 books every man should read. I want 10 books that every MMA student should read.
Well, I want to.
You read as much as anybody.
I want to go a step further with it too. Like I get into this, so like somewhat recently, and I'm still listening to it. It's kind of taking me a while, but Three Musketeers, Dumas. But like Count of Monte Cristo with Jim Caviezel,
that's one of the best.
Man in the Iron Mask with Leonardo DiCaprio, and then The Musketeers on Disney. What I would like to do is like, okay, I want to do a book review over those 3 books.
Okay.
I want to do maybe. Do a blog about the individual movies and kind of review them.
Sure.
And then, sit down and do a big podcast about Alexander Dumas' work.
Yeah.
And make it be a much bigger cultural thing than just the book. Because what's interesting to me is how many books like that have become this timeless part, like the Musketeers.
Yeah.
Like I remember being in that French Revolution course, and when the professor said Musketeers, I was like,
oh, yeah?
We're in that time period, like it was, but like by my ears, they literally perked up. I was like, did you say the King's Musketeers?
Yeah.
But, like I just grew up and that was like a part of my.
Sure. Some things are timeless and you can't even identify why always. Musketeers, why is there a Western genre? And there's nothing else like that really in film. This moment in time that we just fall in love with. I was talking to my class about this, that weird little thing that is cool, that makes you go viral. Remember the dude skateboarding, listening to Fleetwood Mac and drinking Ocean Spray, listening to Dreams?
Yeah, that was funny.
And I played that video for him, like, what made this go viral? And it's in a world of fake stuff. There was a dude who was real. That just seemed like a moment that he recorded. He had no clue it was going to go.
Well, do you remember the Double Rainbow guy?
I don't think so.
Oh, Double Rainbow!
I've heard about this.
Oh, yeah. He actually passed away recently,
no.
sadly. But he sees his double rainbow and he starts like losing his mind about it and he starts crying.
Oh, okay.
And it is like the realest thing you've ever seen. And it's just like, oh, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And but it's just like at first he's like overjoyed. He's like, "Oh, double rainbow all the way across the sky."
Yeah. What is that thing that makes us fall in love with something? It's fun.
It is.
You mentioned Game of Thrones. Now this is serious business because all of us are heartbroken. I want to find the small club of people who like season 8 and probably assault them. But who likes season 8?
Yeah. Well, you know what I've begun to realize.
Mm-hmm.
So this House of Dragon.
Yes.
There are things, I think that maybe now I'm viewing it this way. That with season 8, they left like all of these things. It's like, well, what are you guys going to do with that? The whole like faceless man thing. Like, what's the point of that whole plot?
Right.
I mean, I had theories about that. I'm like, that dude got Ned Stark out of the dungeon. And he's alive.
Yeah. I know you did. Yeah.
I mean, all sorts of wild theories. But I think that through the spinoffs, like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
Sure.
Now, I wish that Better Call Saul in context now. I want to watch the whole thing again now that this final season just came out. they went a little overboard on the tie-ins in the last season.
Okay.
I would have liked to seen more of that over like the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
You know, and I
Yeah.
think they could have done that. But I think that Martin's super involved in this House of the Dragon.
Okay.
And the House of the Dragon's like 170 years before Daenerys.
Yeah. Something like that.
So it's real interesting. I think there's a bunch of stuff, and they might just be doing it because we're pissed.
Yeah.
But I think there's a bunch of stuff that they might have intentionally rather left unanswered.
Ooh. I
And
like
they're
that.
going to answer it in the spinoff because they're even talking about Jon Snow's getting a spinoff. They're
Yeah.
going full on Disney with the model. And this is
Careful.
another thing, too, with HBO Max. You know, like, oh, I'm not going to the theater. I'm just going to watch it at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but the way streaming has changed. Like,
Yeah.
why didn't we buy Netflix stock
Yeah.
20 years ago when we were getting the DVDs mailed to us?
That's a weird revolution. Watching network television be killed in front of our eyes.
Well,
Netflix is doing it.
I know, but I mean, I was watching Amazon Prime and Netflix, and I just didn't see that, like, Disney Plus and
Mhm.
HBO Max, and, like, I got HBO Go when it came out.
Yeah, I remember.
But for, Game of Thrones, really, and
Yeah.
The True Detective, Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, with Game of Thrones, I'm hoping that they avoid, I think they can. The obvious problem to me with the series, 1 through 8, is you switched voices in season 5 or 6 when you got off the books. Now the showrunners had to interpret Martin rather than mimic him. And I think that was a doomsday for
Well,
him.
I don't know on the last bits of Game of Thrones, but the way I was reading articles the other day, because I was like, look at this, he is super involved in this
Yeah.
House of the Dragon show.
And that's okay, but there is not.
It's a book for that, though.
Yes. There's not an existing plot that dies somewhere and it just has to go from a vision that they share with him. If you took Mark Twain and had him write 8 chapters and then told Hemingway to finish the book, I think we'd be dissatisfied. You can say, oh, that's a cool process, but when the author changes, the reader is like, that's not the voice.
That is a good point. And Twain was all about voice, really.
If they can have the same creative process through this House of Dragon, maybe it won't be such a letdown. And maybe Martin needs to learn that, yeah, this is the way it's going to work moving forward, By the way, he's the best science fiction writer I've ever read. I'm so impressed with those books. And that's why we love the show so much, because they followed his books, which is so good at throwing you curveballs. He wasn't afraid to kill anybody, all the jokes. And I'm hoping the same thing for the Game of Thrones spinoff is that they maintain some guts.
Well, you telling me about Duncan Egg.
Yeah.
Is the Hedge Knight in that story?
Yeah.
They're doing the spinoff of the Hedge Knight.
Right, and that's the ancestor of the female knight. Forgot her name. See your face, the blonde one.
Bryn of
Yes.
Tarth, yeah.
Yes, or as what's our buddy?
Tormund Giantsbane.
I love that guy. It's the big woman still here.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, dude.
That is so awesome.
Dude, I will say this. Surprisingly, she's a very beautiful woman.
Oh yeah, she's a model.
And she played in Star Wars: Force Awakens as a crazy trooper. But yeah, I mean, she is really beautiful. It blew my mind seeing her like.
They
really,
ugly her down for that. I hate to say it out loud, but they do. And then they still got criticized for that because in the book she's actually much homelier. She's not relatively attractive.
Wow.
Yeah, she's a wildebeest. One thing that it kind of reminded me of though was Star Wars. You switched voices. We went from Abrams to Rian Johnson back to Abrams, and that just slaughtered that whole sequels scenario. And both times, I can kind of get HBO screwing it up and the showrunners wanting to get away from it. Why in the world would Disney spend $4 billion on a franchise and then butcher immediately your sequels? You've already got all these movies. And what we've seen with The Mandalorian is when you leave
rewatching it yesterday.
When you leave the main track, we fall in love again. There's too much pressure in the system, and I'm kind of worried about House of Dragon. I think it can work because you've left the main track, none of the same characters. But with the Jon Snow spinoff, you're going to be dealing with people and their expectations, not necessarily the smartest business model, I think.
Well, and so I wonder, like, how much they can cash in on this idea of answering people's questions.
Yes.
Right? Like, what was left unanswered, you know? And, too, like, a big part of, like, people, I think, holding on to the very end of Better Call Saul was, like, this is going to answer some of those... And too, I remember. Have you seen Breaking Bad?
Oh yeah, best TV show ever.
you remember when they first meet Saul and they take him out in the
Yeah.
desert?
You wanna
But
kill
he
him?
goes, oh, did Lalo and Nacho send you or something like that? But
Yeah.
it's like when I saw that and had seen Breaking Bad and got to know who Lalo and Nacho were,
Yeah.
and then I rewatched all of Breaking Bad one time, I was like,
Everything ties together.
you do start to see it in a little different light. And like they
Mhm.
did the backstory on how Hector had the stroke and everything.
Mhm.
Did you watch Better Call Saul?
Yeah,
too?
yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I haven't seen the last season. I've seen
Oh.
up to 5, I guess. I'm waiting for 6. But I think that may be the best TV show I've ever seen. I think Saul may be the best spinoff I've ever seen. And it all had one voice. It all had the same 2 people. Was it
Mhm.
Gilligan?
Gilligan, Vince Gilligan, and
His buddy. They're all following that. And to me, that's one reason that you can do that, is you've got this committed crew. So I'm hoping with the House of Dragon that they kind of remember, we've screwed this up before. Let's play it full. Now, you said something that teetered on a theory that I have, and I think I brought this up to you before. Martin, too, I guess, I understand his own preference, said he didn't like all the fan fiction that came out about Game of Thrones and the alternate theories. He was like, you guys are writing extra chapters for me. Go make up your own characters. These are mine, right? I don't like it. But as I was watching, I was thinking, some of the theories that we saw were better than what we were getting for the next episode. What about a crowdsourced series?
Oh yeah, I mean we've seen that. I got tons of Star Wars fan books down there.
Mhm.
And that was a big controversy when the Lucasfilm was reacquired or whatever they did with that.
Yeah.
Is that they had been accepting a lot of these books as canon,
Yeah.
and then all of that got thrown out.
Yeah, which I don't think was a great decision. But could you have the guts to create a good situation, right? Shoot a season, and then tell the public, write the next chapter, and we're going to give the winner $10,000 per episode. I would write chapters for a chance at $10,000, and maybe even put the best ones that they read online and let us vote. And hide the results of the vote so we don't know which one won. So we still get surprised when we watch it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it could go any direction. It could go episodes or like I like what they did with El Camino.
Yes.
We got this little bridge movie over here too. That's the post. That's
post Breaking Bad.
Yeah, and they tied that back in at the end of Better Call Saul.
Oh, really?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. Like it just in making mention of that situation.
But that's part of the freedom of the internet. How many people made money off of Game of Thrones that weren't affiliated with it because they put up a Patreon page and started talking about it? There were so many different. There was even a TV show for Walking Dead called Talking Dead.
Yeah.
We just want to chat about it, and we have the ability for all to talk to each other. I'm wondering if it's going to change the creative process, because no matter how good Martin is, and I told you I think he's the best, I was still seeing theories that I like better than what I was getting on the screen sometimes. You can't beat 1 million people every time, George Martin. Sorry. But that's, to me, I'm really ready for somebody to do that and have the guts to say. And there's time if you shoot a whole season and then you've got a year before the next season comes out. There's a time to do 6 months of planning and writing before we start shooting again. You could literally have, a crowdsourced second season. And
Did you see the film that Corey was just in?
no,
Yeah. So Corey was just in a Star Trek fan film.
you're lying.
That oh yeah, let me pull it up.
Absolutely.
It has really amazing views already.
Well, tell me she roundhouse kicked somebody in this film.
Oh, she was beating all kinds of ass, dude, and
Yes.
kissed another man. Like what?
Wait, what?
Oh yeah, dude. I was cool about it though, and they were talking about how cool I was.
Were you
She did all
off
these
screen
interviews.
glaring at him?
I wasn't even around. Dude, she's been in a bunch of Shakespeare.
I don't think I knew this about her. She's an actress.
She's an amazing actress, dude. Like, she's a performer.
Well, go ahead and say on air, what does she do wrong? Like, is there anything this lady can't do?
Tries to control me too much. I'm just kidding, sort of.
You got to.
She is. It is, dude. It's like you create a monster because she's a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So it's just like everything I'm into except for like the podcast. She's like got equally as good of an opinion about.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's just weird having a wife that's a jiu-jitsu black belt, to be perfectly honest. Avalon Universe, The Needs of the One, right there. That's her.
Okay.
Let's see. I doubt we have audio on this, but we'll just pull it up. Oh yeah, here she is. We're about to get ads though. Look, she's triangling this motherfucker right now.
Yeah.
It's like Lethal Weapon 1, dude. Get the VRBO. I'll pull it back up. See, my friend Josh Irwin, he's been on the podcast a couple of times. Dude, it's like what you were saying. Like, he and I did a podcast over the Walker Texas Ranger reboot because it pissed us off.
Okay.
And I got all of the seasons over there, dude. But he does this fan film, and like he crowdsourced. Crowdsourcing is becoming just super popular. She was a Vulcan.
Okay.
He's supposed to be. This is all done. Like I'm training with Mike up in the next room when they were filming this.
Some of that shot right here, huh?
Well, no, that's actually same mats, but in Inferno Bentonville.
Okay.
So they were shooting up in Bentonville. But Josh Irwin is the director of this, and he's been on the podcast a couple of times. But like the production value, jeez, I used to not get YouTube ads, and I turned it off a couple years ago, and I regret it all the time. It's extra bad now. Needs of the One, a Star Trek fan production, but 30 minutes. He's done several of these. And they're really good. Like the reception he's gotten. She wore this ugly wig in the beginning, but she her true Vulcan self or whatever. She sheds the wig at a certain point. She's about to beat his ass. But basically, like Cora was the perfect candidate for this.
Well, sure.
Because
the stuff looks real.
And it's like, I mean, to have a jiu-jitsu black belt with acting experience appear in your film is really awesome. Let's see how many views they're up to now. This is just a few weeks old. 12,000 views.
Nice.
And they released it.
Don't read the comments. People are going to be saying stuff.
Oh, dude. I mean, like, look, nice episode. Does well to add something new and original. Great episode. Like, they really enjoyed the film. Nice work, Josh. Like, the positive feedback they get on these episodes he does. He has some episodes, like, 80,000 views.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Has she ever thought about coordinating stunts for movies?
I don't know. We did go to that Indiana Jones stunt show at Disney a while back, though.
Yeah.
That was super cool.
I've seen it. It is cool. But, that's a crazy kind of niche that if you could tap into, you got to make that stuff look real, and most people can't, and you need somebody who knows how to do it.
I was reading about, have you been charting, like, Brendan Fraser's, like, beloved now?
Yeah.
Like, somebody, like, he had, like, a 6-minute standing ovation today. He's, like, crying about it.
Right.
But I was reading this article about this today, about how, like, he was super jacked from doing all of his own stunts in the Mummy trilogies, those 3 movies, and ended up getting, like, spending 7 years of surgeries, just, like, in and out of the hospital. I forget what, like, just a laundry list of stuff that he developed that he had to get fixed. But that's definitely something. I mean, that was what was cool about the Indiana Jones stunt show, though, is, like, they were talking to you about stunt work, like educating you about stunt work. Like, this is what we're going to do here. And, but that's definitely something I thought for a long time Core could do something like that. But it's just like the issue is, like, quite literally,
she's busy.
Well, she's busy. I'm busy. I just left a $40,000 a year job, and I do not notice it at all.
Yeah.
Like, so, we are consumed with doing just gym stuff.
I got you.
But who knows?
Yeah.
Someday, if she's able to do more. I mean, she could do stuff like that. She was able to do that, no problem.
Yeah. I met a stunt coordinator last year, right before COVID. I Ubered some to see if I would like it, and I'm really interested in the gig economy. I'm kind of trying to learn about it.
You were driving Uber?
Absolutely.
Wow. Where, in Greenbrier or where?
Little Rock.
Okay. How far is Greenbrier from Little Rock?
Probably 40, 45 miles.
Okay.
Not that bad. So I would take my wife to work when she worked in Little Rock, drop her off, and Uber, and pick her up at the end of the shift. And I wanted to learn about it, and it was actually kind of fun because I call it speed dating. You meet people, you're there in your car for 15 to 20 minutes max, and then they're gone from your life. And I met all sorts of cool people. One lady was, her son had a surrogate mother in Arkansas, and they were there for the birth and everything. And so, he was gay, so he and his husband couldn't have kids. So a lady here had done that for him. And you get to talk about that, and then she's gone from your life, and you're always wondering, what happened to that kid?
Yeah.
But this dude gets in my car. He's Asian. He's 50. He looks 25. And we start talking. And what are you doing? I picked him up on the bayou over there in Little Rock. He's shooting a movie with John Cusack, and he's the stunt coordinator. So we start talking.
How long ago was this?
This is probably right before COVID. So this is probably late 2019, maybe early 2020. And he was a stunt coordinator on Mandalorian episode where they meet Ahsoka.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm like, really? He pulls out his cell phone and starts showing me raw footage.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this dude must have been affiliated with Dan Insano because, you
Yeah.
know, that's Dan Insano's daughter with the staff.
Okay.
Dan Insano is Bruce Lee's last living student,
Oh, yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
he's a 3rd or 4th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
Like, I was watching his videos this morning while I was on the treadmill at the fitness center
Yeah.
and the row machine.
I was so geeked up as he showed me that. I'm like, you've got the job I want. Stunt coordinator, you know how much fun that is? They blow stuff up and fake punch people all day long. How great is your life? And that was the hilarious thing about looking at how do you get into something like that? Like, how do you break in?
Well, look at Gina Carano.
Yeah.
I mean, she broke in through the martial arts industry.
Sure.
Like, I mean, with MMA. And that's, I think Cord could do a lot with acting. She actually has a theater degree.
Mm.
So,
I think I remember that.
yeah,
now.
theater and then history. She has a history degree. She has a
Yeah.
double degree.
Cool for her.
Yeah.
She's one up on you.
I have a master's.
Okay. Touche.
Oh, yeah, but that we'll you know banter back and forth about that. But she's way smarter than me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she pays the taxes, dude.
Yeah, of course.
I can't even look at the taxes. I'd start getting hung up on how much of it's going out the door.
Oh, yeah.
It's just better if I don't see it. Like, dude, last summer our processing for credit cards increased. Like, they raised it significantly because of the number we were running and pandemic, the fees just went up a little bit. And I mean, we were paying like thousands to take payments.
Mm-hmm.
And got it down to like $1,000 or something. But man, when I see shit like that, I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness.
I don't even want to know the cost of doing business.
Dude, well,
pain.
payroll taxes.
Yeah.
Property, like I mentioned, the property tax. I don't remember if we were on the air, but our first year in this building, we paid $5,000 in property taxes.
Yeah.
But it is, cost of business is kind of high. That's what, dude. That's part of the reason I'm so resentful with the city situation. It's like, look, you people need to support us because like everybody comes here. Like everybody knows somebody that comes here. We're very well liked in the community, and we're 100% self-made. And it's like this whole pay the piper mentality. Like, we're gonna tell you how you do everything.
Yeah.
I don't get that. Like, what I want to do in my backyard that's not visible from a city street, that should be my business.
Yeah. What do you want to do besides this? How do you take this and add on? What's the next stage?
Well, you get, the podcast,
Yeah.
which is going to be much more, because, the last 2 years, I was putting all my energy into recording shit for my students that I was not releasing.
Yeah.
And really did not do it in a way where I would release it, you know. A lot of it was done on campus. I had a fair amount, like on my personal YouTube. I've got a bunch of lectures on there I need to go scrub and just like put normal Brian shit on my YouTube. But the podcast, with the gym, like, who knows what's going to happen with that too. For example, we bought this. We got a really good deal on it. I owe like $380 on it now. We just got it an appraiser to look at it because of some of the upgrades we're having to that we're doing, and he was like, "This is an amazing lot. And like in this market with everything, with what we've done to it, is we really fixed it up. This is like a run-down 24-hour fitness center, and I would say we could probably unload on it for like $675, and I paid $415,
Yeah.
$425, something like that.
Right.
I think it was, we did $415, and I think I financed the air units. All the air units were bad.
Yeah.
So, but really, man, like everything I was doing for the college, I can do with the podcast. You see my sick ass podium over there?
Yeah.
Like that thing is badass.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you, Tim. Tim, my boxer, is who I guess he's his own boxer. I don't own him or anything, but he trains here, and he's like, his dad passed away, fell off a roof of a house and died.
Lord.
And this happened 3 weeks after he graduated high school. But this kid, when I met him, was like DNF student, about to drop out, and now he's like a little brother to me, and would do anything for him. But he refinished that for me. He put up this wall. He did the paneling in here. He did the trim. McMillan, who I mentioned earlier, and my dad, and Mr. Dean, who passed away from COVID, built this table.
Yeah.
So, but, yeah.
Looking good. Looking good. I've got a. Well, I'll throw a couple podcast ideas at you off the wall.
Come on.
Yeah,
Come on with it.
absolutely. Know a lady who is foster dog. She's up to like 110 now.
Oh, wow.
And I told her, and I think she's doing it. I know she's doing it. Write a book, a coffee table book about these dogs. So, like, one of her dogs is really accomplished. What's it called? Oh man, not the comfort dogs, but it's
Service dog.
yes, that's the one.
Okay, yeah.
And we were talking about the other ones she has and how crazy some of them are. And I was like, man, put together the 10 best stories. And people love dogs.
Oh, yeah.
You love dogs.
I know somebody that in Denver, the lady who I was seeing,
Yeah.
which is Mr. Dean's daughter, at that bookstore I was talking about earlier,
Mhm.
she wrote a book about her dog, which is a husky.
Okay.
And that goes over super well up there in the snowy mountains of
Oh, I
Colorado.
bet. Yeah. How many great books have you read about dogs?
Well, I mean, there's Old Yeller,
Call of the Wild.
Where the Red Fern Grows.
Oh my gosh. You talking about rip my heart out.
Dude, so I was listening to that on my way back from Worlton one day, and it like concluded, and I got out of the car, and I was like crying, and Cora was like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Not about lion." Oh, dude. But really, I mean, oh man, that and Old Yeller both.
Yeah.
Oh.
Old Yeller was so traumatic for me as a child.
Well, see,
They didn't pull the punch either.
I had a hunting dog that got ran over when I was a kid chasing rabbits
Mhm.
in Hartman on Highway 64. And when I was like 14, I'd had him since I was 8.
Mm-hmm.
But like he lived outside, like my dad was just like. But now, dude, my dog Hickson and Gracie, Pupperman and Gigi,
Yeah.
their aliases. Man, I just all the time I'm looking at them and I'm like, oh man, I love you guys so much.
That's
Like
crazy.
I can't fathom. But yeah, I do have an extreme soft spot. Dardanelle just overturned their pit bull ban.
Yep.
And Russellville's talking about doing that. And Dardanelle's mayor said they're trying to become a no-kill county.
Cool.
But yeah, that's the sort of stuff I wish that local communities, like that's something like, man, everybody can get behind that.
Yeah.
Like we in Russellville, one of the mayors, hope I can sit down and talk to a guy running about this, is like we have a substantial homeless population.
Mm.
Like our free and reduced school lunch percentages. Like there's some like just, and then it's like some of these people are in programs and like trying to get back on their feet, and some of them are just transients that beg on the side of the road all day every day and don't want to work.
Right.
But man, like every one of the interstates is had. I'm sure you see it coming down for ROTC.
Conway's covered up with it.
Mhm.
You got 4 sharing an interstate intersection, like they're on different corners. You know, I don't know what the road for that is, but you hear like Rogan and company grappling about California, where they've got tent cities everywhere and trash in the streets. And
I remember seeing that the first time I went to California. It kind of blew my mind.
Seattle is where I was like, okay, there's
living on the side of the interstates.
Yeah,
what I was seeing
in the overpasses. And you know, there's too many times I think we have a problem, and you look to where's the government, and you look for this big federal solution, and you just said the magic word. That needs to be a local solution.
Mm-hmm.
How are you guys going to come up with it? How can you find services, housing, et cetera, and so forth? My wife's in mental health. She's a nurse practitioner, and that for her is such a passion of like, hey, there's I can't remember his name. There's a homelessness advocate on Rogan's podcast, and he actually is probably the opposite of what you would guess. One thing he said I thought was fascinating is we should quit using the word homeless. He said that implies the problem is the home, a lack of a roof. He said if you give them a home, the reason they're homeless is drugs or mental illness. Mm-hmm. He said the vast majority 100%. Of them. He said, so if you give them a roof, you haven't solved the problem. They're in there doing drugs with their friends, or they sell it so they can buy drugs. And he said, we need to be looking at treatment centers and finding a way to get people out of this rut that leads to homelessness. And I thought, man, that's a great point. Language is strong. Language is very powerful.
Well, it's with that, like you hit it on the head, I think, is like locally, yes, but man, local, state, federal, I was talking to somebody about this week. Yeah. It's like, it's almost like local government's a microcosm to some of the bigger problems that we would talk about.
Yeah.
But, when we have these institutions in place and things to deal with these problems, and I just think they're ineffective.
Yeah.
For example, like the VA.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that's an example. And that, like, if we're not going to take care of people like yourself that have served the country, you know, but no, I mean, I totally agree. But where I'm going with that is total anarchy.
Yeah.
In every sense of the word. Like, that needs to be the private sector. The government shouldn't have fucking shit to do with it because they fuck up too much.
Right.
Like,
right.
I mean, what's so funny to me, and I was joking with somebody the other day, like that, like everybody I meet, like fucking laments, like they hate this country. Like they're talking about all the problems, and then I'm like, greatest country on earth.
It is. It absolutely
well,
is.
and then people would be like, oh yeah, it is. That's the bad part about it.
Yeah. So what are we so mad about? What are we so
Yeah.
jacked up about? Your life is good. You do what you want, and our material benefits, like, you know, we live pretty well. And I ain't rich, and you're not rich. You're getting there, but you're not rich. Why are we always so unhappy? Do you think sheep herders in Guatemala are this unhappy?
Yeah, probably not. Well, and dude, I mean, I think it just all comes down to this. It's like, why did I quit my job?
I think because you wanted to do what you loved without somebody telling you how to do it.
I will not be controlled.
Yeah, exactly.
Will not be controlled.
Yeah.
You know, human beings don't want to be controlled.
Yes.
And that is really like all of our political strife. I feel like, what's the narrative? It's like, well, government's trying to,
Yeah.
you know, you guys said this is a problem and they want to fix it.
Right.
And they're going to take control.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Rogan keeps talking about this. This one doctor's like, about putting the microchip in the pills. He's like, imagine the compliance.
Oh, yeah. He uses that word.
Yeah, he uses the word compliance. But it's like, man, from Bay of Pigs on down, it's like, what do you want to talk about? Like, again, back on Thurman's thesis, it's like, how trustworthy.
Yeah.
Or like, man, you want to talk about Bill Clinton's governorship in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know what happened. But, damn, there's some great theories and stories and reports. But that is, like, as I have researched it, and there's a guy I followed that's been on Joe's podcast, and I don't follow him a ton, but Stefan Molyneux, he's an anarchist. He got some good, when he comes on Joe's, I like listening to him. I don't listen to him anywhere else.
Okay.
But he just talks about what anarchy is all the time. Mm-hmm. And he's like, anarchy is this. Like, you don't ever talk to your parents again because they want you to go to jail because you smoke marijuana.
Okay.
Like, he's like, that, you know, that is a sense because he, like, man, he has some really interesting metaphors. He's like, do you think we should have a system in place that can just come over to my house when I've done nothing wrong, nothing to hurt anybody, and just literally, I mean, think about the people that are serving 30-year terms in jail.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
For, like, you know, particularly people of color, they statistically have longer sentences for every drug.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting kind of component. I wonder, the war on drugs, like that didn't work.
Yeah, yeah. We failed. We lost.
Yeah. Well, fuck what the cartels are doing.
Oh, man.
I was listening to Joe and Eddie Bravo talk about, like, stem cells in Tijuana.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, no, this neighborhood's super nice. The cartel just fixed it up.
Oh, gosh.
There's a Marriott there.
Yeah,
That's what he said. I was like, oh.
Well, that's what organizations do. Criminal organizations look to become legit because they want to hand their kids something that's not tainted. Mm-hmm. And so the mafia here owns how much, you know, gambling is largely controlled by former mobsters, right?
Well, I thought about that with the casino coming in here.
Oh, yeah.
It's like I know somebody that worked as a chef at a casino in Colorado and was talking about, like, how much their community changed after the casino came
Sure. In. Yeah. Man, I hope your leadership here is looking at that because that thing is going to change things for the better and for worse. Mm-hmm. And all you got to be is just a small-time businessman to be looking at that. Well, prostitution's fixing to pick up in this town. How are you going to combat that? Robberies are going to pick up. Mm-hmm. You know, there's
trafficking.
Yeah, exactly. Going down the list of all the undesirables. Now, there's also going to be some positive things. There's going to be more bigger houses built because that's going to bring in how many jobs? Paying $80,000
a bunch
a year.
Of I was driving around Springfield the other day, and I was just like looking at all the like stores. Like bigger businesses, like furniture stores and like electronics and books and like, man, they were everywhere. Restaurants. And I was thinking, I was like, man, every one of these stores has a manager that makes a middle class income.
Oh, yeah.
And an assistant manager. Like some of them were very big.
Sure.
And they were everywhere. Like Springfield's a larger community, but I was like, man, this is like, you know, Arkansas we don't have that. Like Russellville's not like that.
You're going to get more like that.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly. But it's interesting. Like you got to go to like Maumelle into Little Rock to get that, or you got to go. I mean,
West Conway.
Yeah, good Conway too. But then like Fayetteville, Springdale, Bentonville area to get that, just like that sheer number. But like in the River Valley, we don't have that as much. And
Sure.
Like right here, like kind of where we're at, and off the beaten path. But I'm just like, man, I look at Arkansas and I'm like, why are our numbers lower in household income?
Oh, yeah.
And I think a part of it is we just don't have as much of anything. Business industry.
Sure.
We do have JB Hunt and Walmart and all that, and that's great. But I'm just talking about, man, like places like mine. I have 12 employees here, and they don't all make the total best wages. But I am about to bring on another salaried employee, and I will pay her more than she has made at the place she's worked for 10 years. You know, so what do you think? What are your predictions for the 2024 election? Let's say Trump and Biden.
God bless. I'm dreading that.
I really, what I'm dreading is the sustained riots. Like, I just feel like there is, like, I've talked about this with a few people and just broke down the scenarios. Okay, Trump wins.
Okay.
How does the left react? Which left and right are terms of the French Revolution.
I'm going to be blunt. The left is not as militant as the right. They're not as pissed off. I think the right anger is driving American politics, has been for nearly 20 years, and I find that fascinating. I really talk about that a lot with people. They get tired of hearing me ask them questions about it. But like 12 years ago, well, 14 now, George W. was still our president. And people would defend him to the hilt. And that was a failed presidency. I'm sorry. 2 unpopular wars and a terrible economy at the end of his 8 years. Like, that's a failed presidency, dude. And now the Republican Party has turned on him. And they'll tell you he and Cheney are old news. And they started those 2 stupid wars where you weren't complaining about them in 2008. This is a new Republican Party with a whole lot of anger that's boiled to the surface. And if the right loses, that anger is going to go nuts. It's going to cost us more than a January 6th.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think Trump as a second term is going to be a very vindictive president. I complimented him on his first cabinet. It was all stars, and that's awesome to me when you're not so insecure that you won't get yes men. He had generals on his staff, right? He had Rex Tillerson, former head of Exxon, sorry.
How many people did he went through several people. Was that within his cabinet?
Oh, yeah. Okay. And so he fired all of those studs with their own resumes and their own clout. And he got a bunch of yes men at the end of his second term, which a lot of presidents do. They get tired of being, second guessed. And Trump does not like being contradicted, right? So his second term, I don't have a lot of faith that it's going to be about anything other than revenge and
which is really,
bickering.
I mean, what a bunch of people say his first term was about was like
he
had been
loose,
he had been embarrassed publicly by the Obamas, right? And I saw a documentary about this, and they're like, this is the moment, that he decided to do all this.
Obama does a mic drop, and tells him you'll never be president, and a lot of folks think he decided, oh yeah, I will. Now, conspiracy theories I don't buy into fully, but one that his friends say is true. People who still support him and were close to him, he never thought he could win, but he was going to run in 2016 and then leap into media. He was going to start another Fox News type channel,
which he did,
kind of did with Truth Social, right? His network that's the replacement Twitter. And I think somewhere along the line, there's people who say he didn't know he was going to win until the night of the election. And then suddenly there was no plan moving forward. Chris Christie's got some great stories on this. He had this transition plan, and he was hired to do that. And Trump didn't really put a lot of faith into it. And Christie says Trump took that plan, threw it out the window, and was like, where are my buddies at? I got to start getting Flynn and others jobs, right? Because these guys helped me. And Christie will tell you, I hadn't vetted some of those people. Well, they're getting hired, and we haven't done the background checks, Now, some of them were good, some of them not so good. But the end result of the second time around, I think, with Trump on that is now he's running to win. It's different. And I don't really mean this as an insult, although it is. He was not a real active president. He was on Twitter. But if you look at what Trump did, he didn't start his day till 1 p.m., somewhere like 11 a.m., 1 to 1 p.m. He watched TV all morning. he did not get involved with Congress and sponsor a whole lot of bills. He had one major legislative bill he really engaged with, and that was the tax cut in 2017. The rest of it, he was not the guy who was working the phones. Lyndon B. Johnson was having meetings, power meetings, with 3 congressmen a day.
I just want to be like giving you the Johnson treatment.
Oh, yeah. You got to get over me.
He would lean into people. Didn't they call it the Johnson treatment?
Yeah. But some of that was intimidation, but some of that was working, you know. And Trump was more of a cheerleader than he is a nuts and bolts, let's get something done guy. He's a great cheerleader. The best I've ever seen for whooping a crowd into a frenzy. There is nothing like him in recent American history.
I've seen some of his recent rallies.
Oh, yeah.
And the following that it looks like he has at those. I mean, you can't see, like, I don't see, like, pans of the whole crowd or anything, but.
Yeah. So what's the left going to do if he wins? I think they're going to cower. I think there's going to be a lot of problems, and probably a lot of sporadic riot and violence. But I don't really think the Democrats have ever gotten together and figured out how to fight yet. They don't know how to do that. The Republican Party's a lot more, I don't know another word for it, they're a lot more militant, and that's not just talking about guns. They're changing state laws until the state legislature can overturn an election if there's enough problems. There's a lot of efforts. It's something like 30 states have bills in front of them right now, and some have been signed, to change their election laws. And that worries me greatly. Like, what power do the state legislatures have to contradict the popular vote of the state? That's what they're trying to achieve. How's the Supreme Court going to react? This is the most conservative court you've ever seen in your lifetime. So I think there's a lot of questions that we're going to get answered, and they're not all going to be positive. And again, what I don't understand is, you love this country, right? Why is everybody so unhappy? Why is everybody so mad? But anger is a huge part of our politics right now.
It is, like, outrage and just. I literally saw a "fuck Biden" flag.
Oh,
locally the other day.
They're on my way home. I see them.
Yeah. Well, and then over on Parkway here, there is there's some houses on Parkway, which I like, other end of Parkway East, and there's like a boat out in the yard, and it has a Confederate Robert E. Lee battle flag on it.
Okay, there you go.
Like, right, just like on one of our main streets, the one that floods when it rains.
Sure.
But yeah, you know, I'm real curious. I don't see any super desirable paths. Man, that's as soon as Biden got kind of settled in the White House, I was just like, okay, well, this is going to happen again in 2024. Yeah. Like, I kind of, I did not think that Trump would have the personality to accept that defeat based off of not just the initial banter, but like, oh yeah, he can run again, and he's going to.
Yeah.
And I really, man, it blows my mind that, like, and this is not to say anything controversial, I'll tell everybody this, but like, it blows my mind he lost. Like, I wouldn't have voted for him. I did not want him to win.
Gotcha.
But I don't even see the world in which the man lost, other than the one world you mentioned earlier. You had a bunch of people not voting for Biden, voting against Trump.
Yeah.
But man, he is so well liked. Here, exactly. But I mean, it is baffling that I know a lot of people hated him. He is
a polarizing figure.
Yeah,
you love him or you hate him.
And I was not, oh man, I really like Donald Trump guy at all. But I am also like, it's weird, man. And I think it's like round pegs and square holes type of a thing. Like, here's the thing. I have some of these views and complain about the city government and stuff because I own a business.
Yeah.
So, like, economically, I'm a pretty conservative guy, but I would not call myself a Republican, right? I'm liberal on a lot of other issues, but then, like, when it comes to you, like, trying to tax me to fix these issues that historically you don't do you're not fiscally responsible, and you want to do stuff with my money. I'll just sidebar off on this because I saw you talking about it online. So I'm getting some student loans forgiven.
Nice for you.
Do you have any student loans?
My wife does.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't checked yet to see if she's eligible.
So I'm getting so I owe $40.
Okay.
Right. But here's the thing: I've already paid back what my education costs. It's the interest. Like, there's a systemic problem with that. But, man, that's a controversial topic right now.
Isn't it, though?
And I was kind of surprised when I'm getting 10, and then I don't know what they're going to do. I had Pell Grants, like $4,000 worth of Pell Grants, but I don't know if they're going to. They say you can get 20 forgiven.
if you make less than a certain amount.
Yeah.
Oh, no, if you were on Pell Grants in the first place. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And you get 10 if you make less than 125.
So I had some Pell Grants. So hopefully I get 20 wiped off. That'd be huge.
Yeah,
And you know, but here's the argument. I've thought this the whole time. I don't believe in trickle-down economics. I don't believe it's ever worked.
No.
But I do believe this. Like, if I don't have to pay back those student loans, I'm going to get more cool stuff like what you see in this room.
That's trickle up.
Yes.
You will spend that money.
Yes.
If you give a poor man money, he will spend it.
I will put it back into the economy.
Yeah. And the middle class will spend it. It ain't until you're rich that you actually take excess money and go do something responsible with it.
Yeah. I've been rolling over my retirement from Morrilton.
Yeah.
And this doing a bunch of stuff like this, getting the student loans all processed through. But, man, I was surprised how much I stacked up in 4 years.
Good for you.
Because Cora has paid into an IRA for that amount of time and has not even half.
Wow.
But one thing we're going to do is in a similar way to how we had it set up on the matching, is I can do that through the business.
Uh-huh.
I've just never been at a scale to do that, but it's super beneficial to do it that way. So, like, basically now, like, Cora and I'll have both of our retirements, and she's putting 10% in, and I have not put anything in because I ain't got it rolled over yet, but we're probably going to knock both of our percentages down and do like 7.5%, 8% and match like 6%.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a sweet write-off for the business.
I bet.
And we can do some things like that with insurance, even without getting insurance through the business.
Okay.
That I just now found out about.
That's interesting.
I have a really good accountant.
Yeah, and that's one thing that bugs me about our whole system is information needs to be easy for you to get your hands on, not hard. It shouldn't be a matter of I need to know the accountant to understand the tax code. It drives me nuts.
Or like something like adding on to your business.
Yeah.
You know? Like, because here's at the end of the day, no one that works at the city has any background in construction.
Interesting.
Like, I mean, dude, it's just like, cool story. You taught a class 15 years ago, and you want to tell me how to do it, and you taught a class in this, and it's not, I'm a history guy.
Yeah.
It's that with city government. It's a bunch of people that they don't do asphalt, they don't own commercial buildings, but they want to tell you how to do the asphalt at your commercial building.
Right. So what we said, I think, earlier is government has become a job, and I wish it was more of a rotating door, and we were constantly getting somebody in who is more current, you know? What about a businessman who retire? You know, you're 63, 62, but you go serve in city government for 5 years, and we use that expertise, and we need more of that model.
Well, and I mean,
like you being on city council makes perfect sense to me. You need young business owners on that city council. You have to represent your group, but
I'm almost idly wealthy, and I can do something like that.
yeah,
because that's another. Well, I mean, that's another part of the problem that I see is like, that's all we're getting is people who are idly wealthy who can literally not work a job and go do this.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the best fit for people, you know. But that's been all throughout history. Like I had that conversation with Rome, you know. But you know, it's like that's another thing. It's like it's such a complex. It takes a lot of your time. I know some of the city council people, and man, like with our current mayor, with all the shit that dude's got, he didn't do a real good job with anything. Period. He's only running one term and not rerunning.
Okay.
Right. But man, he did like get in and have to deal with like the whole George Floyd thing, and like there was a flood, the river flooding, like right when he got in, and then the casino controversy, and like he was keeping marijuana out, like all this stuff, dude.
Yeah.
And but I mean, he got elected by the local church, like they have the biggest congregation, and a lot of them train here. But that sort of stuff goes on too. You know, it's like I wouldn't say this dude was idly wealthy, like probably, you know, upper middle class-ish, worked at the nuke plant and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like this huge group of constituents over here got you in because that's something. What do you think about that? Like, I mean, that is particularly in the South goes on. Like, it goes on in this town bad at two different places where it's like literally from the pulpit, you're going to have the preacher telling you how to vote.
Yeah, the South has never really respected this idea of separation of church and state. And that I've seen people run memes about it now, like that way we shouldn't. Well, Lauren Boebert, a congresswoman, saying that's a ridiculous idea and it never should have been in the first place, the separation of church and state. No, your founding fathers really thought it was important, and they talked about it.
Several of them.
Yeah. There's a great book that only history nerds will enjoy. I'll throw it out there. The guy died of a heart attack. He was at Oklahoma Baptist University. About 1980, wrote a book called The Churches in Cultural Captivity. His name was John Lee Amy. And in it he says the Southern Church has never been progressive. It has never led society in any major cultural change. It has always followed. He points at abolition. Southern churches are not preaching for abolition. They had too many rich parishioners who were slaveholders. Civil rights movement, women's rights movement, anything. He said you go to any of those and pastors are mum. They're preaching status quo. And so that is not an organization that's going to shake things up, change. They are for, as you said, no marijuana, right? No casino.
Blue laws, baby.
Absolutely. Oh, my God.
Well, were we? But didn't you comment on that the other day? I shared something about blue laws, or maybe you did.
I don't know. I don't think it was me. I was talking to somebody about it, though, like it was a northerner who came down here. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
I was like, no, you can't buy booze around here. Or dry counties. They're like, what? You know,
well, and then the conspiracy too, like, oh, the church has bought up all the liquor licenses.
I've heard that before, but I find it hilarious that whenever there is a dry county wanting to go wet, the two groups that come in and fight the hardest against that are the liquor stores in the other county and the preachers, and they're on the same side. So you and the Legal Beverage Council, I think it's called, are fighting to stop it.
Yeah, we have signs go up every time that issue is like, there is a coalition around here.
Oh, sure, yeah. No,
but
it forms all the time.
That goes on. Like one of the dudes running for state representative from Russellville right now is big time construction guy.
Yeah.
And we'll just I don't know. We'll see how he does.
Yeah.
I think he will probably win. We had a big rally with Sarah Huckabee Sanders last night at the fairground.
She's gonna win.
Oh, guaranteed.
It's not even gonna be close.
I wonder if she slaps the bass like her dad.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody about that today. Well, and you were kind of bringing it up earlier. These guys are out of touch with us, right? But look at how hard they try to get in touch with us. Clinton plays the sax. Huckabee plays the bass. George W. rode the Segway and fell off of it. We made fun of him.
Damn, that happened to me one time.
And Obama plays basketball and sings
he had
Amazing
a BlackBerry.
Grace. And he had a BlackBerry. Biden tries to ride the bike and falls off of it. We laugh at him. They're trying to connect, and I am young and vigorous, and that's something that's important to them, but, you can't really pull it off. I don't know how you said earlier about the ages that they can ever be relevant to your world. It's got to be somebody lower in the administration that's that contact to us.
Well, okay, so this is something I've been thinking a lot about. What about in 50 years, with where we are medically?
Oh, gosh.
With, like, technology, like everything, like all the improvements, like we don't need little kid blood and Jeffrey Epstein conspiracies to, like, make us immortal lizards or anything. Where it's just like, yeah, our science is so good. Like, I was listening to Eddie Bravo talk about stem cells. And, like, it's 2 of the shoulder injuries he had. Like, I have one of them, right? And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, what other sort of stuff are we going to come up with that literally keeps us from aging?
Sure.
And there's just a certain point, too. Like, I feel like with nootropics, like how much brain capacity we can have. Like, how much capacity. Like, I can notice this. Like, I didn't sleep super awesome the last couple of nights for whatever reason. But my conversation hasn't been super off, like when I'm talking to people. But I always have, like, I'll just forget little things, like in conversation where, like, where was I going with that? But it's always kind of correlated. But, like, when we kind of go past that, like, what capacity does our brain have as human beings to store information?
Yeah. Now, you asked it from a medical point of view, but I think your answer is probably technology when you come to store information. You know what Neuralink is, and Musk is working on that.
You want to be an early adopter?
No. Everybody wants to be in version 3. I don't want to be 1 or 2. But he said something in a podcast that was haunting to me. I think it was Rogan, was saying, he's going on about what you can do. You've got this computer chip installed. You can access Google. So if you're an accountant, you can come up with last year's spreadsheet, and you're talking real numbers faster than somebody who's over here trying to look it up on it. So Rogan's like, yeah, but a lot of people aren't going to want it. And Elon Musk said they're going to have to take it because they'll be at a competitive disadvantage if they don't. And that chilled me because he's right. Like, if you don't take the cell phone, where is that businessman now? There was some dude saying, I ain't got,
Well, and like look at like from people from my dad's generation,
Yes.
like, he won't go to Walmart
Yeah.
anymore
yeah,
because
the
of
scanners.
self checkout.
Yeah,
It won't work here.
absolutely.
And I mean, I don't prefer, because like I usually have like a huge buggy full, and I'm like, well, we need to get somebody else to scan and bag this,
Uh-huh.
you know.
I'm kind of tired, yeah.
But man, with like all sorts of stuff like that,
Mhm.
where people like, there's generations of people that like we have that growth in technology, and they hit that sort of wall where like they're not adapting anymore. And I wonder if that's going to be the case in 50 years. Or let's just say this: let's say if people like Biden would culturally still be in the mix at 80.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, what if, you know, in 40 years, 110 years old is
It's
the new 80.
Yeah.
That's real interesting. And I mean,
And scary.
well, I mean, Zuckerberg was talking about, you know, he has that initiative to end all disease.
Yeah.
And he's like, there's no reason why we can't do this.
There is one reason. When I've seen people object to even talking about this. Global warming is real. Sorry. The driving force behind it is the world's overpopulated. So if we get to a point where disease is defeated and you can live to 110 years old easily, we've got a worse population problem. Where are we going to go for all, you know, what's going to happen with the excess heat we're generating?
Well, yeah. And I think about this, too. Like, imagine a Great Depression type event.
Oh, sure. Well, we just saw it with COVID, and we do not have a financial system set up to deal with that, an economic system, and a political system set up to deal with that. So how are you going to act next time that we have a mass problem with people finding food to eat? And if you follow global warming, it ruined my garden this summer. How food prices are skyrocketing at the grocery store. How close are we to getting to a point where...
Dude, I spent $330 at Walmart for groceries.
Oh, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
I got a couple of things. It's like, you don't normally get, like, toothpaste, deodorant, mouthwash. Like, some things like that you don't get every time. Cat litter. Like, it pushed it up, like, probably $100. But I was still just like, oh,
Yeah.
$330?
Yeah.
And it's just Corona, you know?
Yeah.
It's not, and I didn't get, like, it was mostly, like, fresh stuff, vegetables, fruits, some meat. But damn.
It's pushing us into a place where I think a lot of us are going to have to ask some questions about that, budgetary-wise. And who is big enough to fix it? If you don't have faith in the government to fix it, do we really have the economy set up where I can individually fix it? I can grow up enough of my own food, cut enough firewood to heat my house. Like, I worry about that sort of crisis that
You gotta have
just
a
mentioned.
permit for that.
Yeah. That'll be the difference. So if there's a new Great Depression, is the New Deal will be more permits instead of more solutions. God bless.
Well,
It's depressing.
it is. Todd Snyder is a artist Cora and I enjoys, folk singer, and
Yeah, I know the name.
he's got a song. That flag right there is like his. It's a Romani flag, but it's like the one he's part of his brand. But he's like. One of his songs, oh, by the way, you need a permit for that. But it is how it's like he tells stories in his songs, and like that, like when he hits that hook, it's hilarious, like make you laugh out loud.
Yeah.
But man, he is a funny folk singer. There's a controversy where like 2 of his songs, Garth Brooks ripped off.
Oh, yeah. I've heard this before.
Beer
Garth.
Run.
Really?
And there's another story where like Garth Brooks had ripped off another one of his songs, and like he questioned Garth Brooks about it, and he tells the story at some of his concerts. I hadn't heard him tell the story, but I've seen the video. And then he's like wrote a song about it, and it's like a Garth Brooks song, the song that he's writing that goes with the story. But super funny, almost like an Arlo Guthrie type.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I got it on vinyl. Something that's like a musings of an agnostic preacher or something like that, and it's hilarious. Like he's got a song. It's like a story song where he's like agnostic, but he's a preacher.
Yeah. I'm jealous of you coming up in the time, the years that I got on you. We didn't have Spotify when I was a kid. You can find so much more music because of the internet. We were stuck with what the local record store was.
Oh, dude, look, you got my vinyl collection here.
Yeah.
Cassettes are coming. Yeah, I need to pull some slack in this.
That's
Cassettes are coming back in. All right.
Who says?
Well, I've kind of seen them coming back in.
Wow.
Like, yeah.
I never thought that would happen.
I know, but did you ever think vinyl would come back?
Only yes, I did, because the artwork.
That is a big selling point for it, for sure.
And because there is something about that, fidelity of like that just says authentic. I don't know what it is, like the smell of leather or something, you know.
No,
Like,
well, I mean, like I'm collecting all my favorite bands,
Yeah.
all of their albums on vinyl.
have you ever jacked with 8-track?
A little bit. One of the old turntables I had an 8-track
Yeah.
player in it, and then an old car I had one in it.
Yeah. What the young folk don't know about 8-track, I don't know why it's called an 8-track. There was actually 4 tracks on it. I guess they're double-sided or something. And
Probably stickers in stereo.
it would record so many minutes, and the button that you would push to fast forward to track 2 might actually come in the middle of song 3. So if you like song 3, you were doomed. You always had to listen to all of track 1, which might be 2 songs you didn't want,
Oh man.
to get the beginning of the 3rd song, and then you have to go to track 2 to hit the next one.
This is funny. Like I remember
The vinyl may come back, but 8-track never will.
I remember the day somebody showed me. I was showing him something on. I'm like, hey, let's watch this jiu-jitsu video and learn how to do it. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna back up here, and he was like, no, just do this.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like,
Oh,
oh wow, like
Yeah.
you just did that, and it went forward 10 seconds. Like whoa.
yeah.
But dude, I was telling somebody this the other day. I remember when like all I wanted was to be able to take the YouTube on my phone and put it on my TV.
Yeah.
That is not hard at all. Like
Sure.
magically, like hit a button on my phone and it's like which TV you want. You want this one, the one in the gym, that
Mhm.
one there,
Right.
the one at your house, the one in your bedroom.
Yeah. And how are human beings going to keep up with this? Because you didn't know to double tap your phone. As technology increases, it increases exponentially. It does not do it incrementally. And your dad's afraid of the scanner. My dad was afraid of the internet. He didn't want to do it. And I was like, dude, he's a smart dude.
He now has an iPhone though. I'll give him that.
Okay. But how are we going to keep up and adapt as more and more things around us change? Or how do we as a species keep up with the technology that's going to outpace us?
Instead of getting, your next oldest relative something totally stupid, get him an Oculus Go for Christmas.
Okay. The virtual reality thing.
Like I just start forcing it on him, like
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
him the technology. Well, I do think this though. I think we need back to the anarchy. We need more community stuff
Mm-hmm.
that is like. I mean, I remember when I was a kid and I had Windows 95. There's a
Mhm.
place right around the street, the Housing Authority. Like I lived in a house in the neighborhood, but then around the street was like apartments, Housing Authority. Not too far from U of O, but there's a place over there that had computer classes. Like the local library had computers you could go use and would have
Mhm.
classes they would offer, and all sorts of different stuff.
Right.
And I think that is, I mean, some people, somebody's talking about this with Brazil, and like they were making the argument, was Gordon Ryan making the argument that the United States and Europe is going to pull away from Brazil in jiu-jitsu. And it's
Okay.
because a lot of people in Brazil that do jiu-jitsu will never be able to afford the technology to watch a video in their hand.
Oh, wow. But how long, you said never, that's a terrible word. How long before somebody realizes I should give you the technology so
Elon
that you
might
can
do
use
that.
my process? That's there's been things about this already where businesses will figure out, if we give something away, it actually increases more customers. And that wouldn't surprise me
Mhm.
if, to get you on the plan, we somehow got to
Yeah,
make the
I mean,
technology
yeah, like
available.
that. Well, are you talking about socialism right now?
A little bit. Yeah.
But well, these are the things. Like, I mean, really, like,
But no, because it could be corporate driven. It wouldn't have to be socialist.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what kind of back with the, like, I'm joking about the anarchy thing, but it's like the private sector will
Mhm.
find a way.
Mhm.
I use that same argument for jiu-jitsu and law enforcement. It's
Yeah.
like the systemic problem is, let's say you're a military guy. Well,
Mhm.
Traye, he knows the bridge and roll. Like, he was in the military. Like, he's our guy. Like, Traye, we're going to send you to Texas.
Okay.
And we paid it's $20,000, and you're going to get certified to be the defensive tactics instructor.
Okay.
You don't have to train martial arts at all. And you've already got that.
Okay.
And you're going to teach everybody how to arrest people and stuff.
All right.
Just do, your once a year, do your training. And we'll keep sending you back. You don't have to get a jiu-jitsu membership or train in a martial arts gym at all.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to send you to this thing. That's the problem. It's like, where's the private sector? Where is, when it's like, yeah, they got like the guy at the very top of the private sector, like the Henner Gracie's, like the Gracie Academy out in Torrance or whatever, where it's like, they're, a couple of upper echelons. Like I remember when Horian was sending hoists to, I want to say he taught at Fort Chaffee for $18,000.
Didn't know that.
Dude, Hoist Gracie doesn't make $18,000 for a seminar now. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But they've never brought in the private sector. They're literally
Mhm.
paying the most
Yeah.
for something. It's like you can get this
Yeah.
now from anywhere. There's like a black belt in every major town in Arkansas almost.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a deep conversation. I'll give you the quick version of it in my mind because the military bugs me with how much money they blow. Ask anybody in the military, like, have you seen wasteful money, and they'll just start rolling off crazy stuff. I wish you'd work some financial responsibility into general's responsibility. How you spend the money is more going to be under your control, and you got to get bang for your buck because the military's in a race to blow as much money as possible. I'm going to be blunt. Dwight D. Eisenhower, military industrial complex, he's absolutely right. And you're half right, half wrong. They do bring the private sector in, but they bring them in for the wrong things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They bring them in for the cafeterias. Well, why don't the Army just cook its own food? Because that's cheaper and more cost effective. And their cooking is a skill that you might actually, use in the outside world. And then they'll skip something like that that's so obvious. There's now a gym, multiple gyms in every state that could handle training these units.
When it wasn't that way for so long,
Yeah.
dude. Most of the time I've done this. And
but it is now.
It is now. And that's
the
the direction
value.
we're headed.
Yeah. So why don't they bring more of you in to train them? Because it's so cost effective to bring you in versus, like you said, teaching somebody. Now, the military, of course, there's plenty of guys that are gung-ho, so we got some good trainers out there. But that's just the nature of the beast. You're going to get aggressive dudes who like doing this on the side, so some of your students will go train.
Well, I mean, I know Goggins doesn't have a background in martial arts, but I mean, look at Jocko. The dude's a black belt.
Yeah.
I saw a video of him giving his daughter a blue belt the other day. But, dude, Jocko came out of one of the baddest gyms in America.
Oh, really?
The guy is like retired now. He just retired last year. Moved to Utah. Fabio Santos is coral belt. Saw him when Hickson got promoted to red belt. Some of my students have trained with this dude several times. He's in San Diego. Dean Lister, also, if you know who that is. So Dean Lister and Jocko came out of that gym.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of Jockos out there. Maybe not as personal, but maybe not as vocal as he is.
Was I telling you this pararescue dude that came through here and whipped my fucking ass?
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude! Like, dude's 43 and one of the best guys I've ever rolled with. But like, I look over, there's a black belt standing in the gym, like we're starting jiu-jitsu soon. I was just like, "Hey,
what's up?"
And then, dude, I felt bad because I didn't know pararescue like what it was really.
Mm-hmm.
I was like thinking like a branch of the Coast Guard or something kind of like that, and I was like that Ashton Kutcher Kevin Costner movie with the helicopter and the jump in the water.
Yeah.
And he was like something kind of like that.
Yeah.
And like I was trying to just joke with him, but he wouldn't open up about it. And I was like, "Well, you like SF?" And he's like, "Well,
yeah."
Like sidestepped it, But then I looked up about this dude. He was a multi-time Silver Star recipient.
Okay.
For jerking people up out of like active war zones that were wounded.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hardcore. So there's some great like images online of some of the insane stuff they do because they'll have to rappel with a guy with a back injury tied to him. Man, that's a hero.
Under
right
fire.
Dude, yes.
Yeah, like, and well, too, like, the stories I was reading about this guy online, like, and then they're calling in an airstrike because they're pinned down. Like, like this one I was reading that's like, they think they're going to get hit with the airstrike, right? Like, they're surrounded on all sides, but they don't.
Yeah.
But, man, it's...
To bring it full circle, something you mentioned earlier, there's so many of those guys that are retired. They have the training, they have the knowledge. Now they're 40-something. We were talking about cops on campus earlier. We were talking about, the need for training in military units, police units that need to be trained in MMA. There's a lot of Jocko Willink types out there that could be absolutely tapped. And I've always wondered why the military doesn't, or the VA doesn't have a body of where can you go from here and take your military training and benefit the public.
Yeah. Well, to think about this, police academy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think police academy is ridiculous. Like how good of an employee, like with the way it currently is, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But again, like let's just put one.
Let's say it's limited.
Yeah.
It's limited.
Well, but okay, so we're gonna need you to leave your family for 20 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You can come home on some of the weekends, like automatically disincentive, like not interested.
Sure.
But. Like if you could do I kind of look and think a lot about like how can we get more quality officers No, like, I mean, quality in terms of health, but quality in terms of, they're not that kid that was bullied that is now on a power trip.
Yeah.
Because I know officers like that. And I think every precinct has them. It is natural. It makes sense.
There's also a bunch of ex-jocks that go into it because they don't have another plan. So now I'm just going to go tackle people for a living.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Now that's, again, we're thinking outside the box. I've always thought that one of the problems with it is not just the training on the front end, but what do you do on the back end? How many cops can last 40 years in that job? None of them. 20 years, too long. They get burned out. They get PTSD.
Yeah, that's a big one.
What if we trained you and there was something at the end of the rainbow? After 10 years on the force, there was another job that you moved into, school resource officer or something like that. We started increasing those things.
Yeah.
And those people who are trained with weapons are trained with other things. Rescue, paramedics, stuff like that. There were other jobs. I think that to me is probably the long-term solution for
Well, it's civic
cops.
engagement on like I said it earlier. Like I don't go practice at the range enough. I don't target practice enough. I don't do enough scenario-based training where it's like, I'll tell you something, like you do 2 minutes on the tie pads or like a 30-second blast, and then you want to put some bullets down range. Like, it's not the same.
No. Yes.
So there's some stuff with that too. But it's like civic engagement. Like, we have a lot of former cops around here, like in McMillan. Like, they offers the enhanced and concealed carry and trains schools and stuff. But it's like more engagement with just the general populace.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we got gun safety course being taught by this guy. He was the #1 marksman, and he's not an officer active duty on patrol anymore. And we usually have a PR, like civic engagement type person. We had that in Russellville, but it's like, man, like what you're saying, I like that. Like, well, you get these guys that have put in the time, like a foot chase will give them a heart attack, but they want to serve the public. And that's another thing, like a lot of stuff we talked about, like, we keep kind of coming back to, like, I'm into service. Like, I have a 501c3 nonprofit. Like, I donate tons of time and energy and resources and money to all sorts of organizations in the community. And we just need, I think, more of that.
Yeah.
More just, I've talked to people about this a lot. Like, I want to drive past a cop and not feel nervous. It's been like that my whole life.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if I was with my parents or what. When I pass the car, it's like,
interesting.
I'm not breaking the law. I'm not speeding. I'm buckled up. And I'm like, holy shit, am I breaking the law? Am I speeding? Am I buckled up?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, you see when you're like, oh. And it's like, why? Why is it that way? And like most people I talk to, like.
Yeah, you check your speed limits first thing you do whenever you pass a cop. Boom. And then you're like, let's make sure I don't break any traffic laws for the next few minutes, right? Yeah, I don't know. That's a weird one. But, oh, man, that's a tough job. It's a vital job. I was actually talking to somebody about that. Is there a job that's more vital? And I'm being serious about this, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Isn't that more vital than even your doctor? Because if you don't have cops, dude, the people who argue, like, defund the police, one of the dumbest slogans I've ever heard in my life. Dude, if you don't have them, everything goes to hell in a handbasket quickly. Is there a more vital job? And yet we have this model that chews people up and doesn't pay them well, and you can't really last forever in it. They got to go do something else for a living after just a few years. We need to look at that because it's where we're headed is not good. The police brutality debate that's online, the officers that just up the road that got in trouble recently. And
that was insane, dude.
Yeah. Now, I don't know that whole story. From what I saw in the film, they could get off easily if he had a weapon or something when that started, because we don't see the whole fight.
Well, yeah, I know. I would be interested to see what more details come out about that, because there's he was alleged to have a knife.
Yes.
But then I've read a couple stories that he turned it over to the officers when they asked for it. And then they started beating his ass after that.
I don't know what the truth is,
Well, and two, apparently they didn't. You have the right to remain silent. They didn't read him his rights, and that's one of the things that he's coming after him for.
Yeah, he's got some good lawyers. He's figured they're fixing that.
Well, and I heard something crazy. This will be something too, but I mean, I could still see him coming out in the good. I guess I don't know if it was him or another person coming through. He's told a lady at a gas station he was going to cut her face off.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that was what the reason, allegedly, the cops were coming to see what was going on
Mm-hmm.
is because somebody told a tenant at a gas station that,
Okay.
and when she told him to leave.
Yeah.
And I guess this guy maybe got on his bicycle and pedaled down to like, a couple miles away to
Yeah.
another gas station. That's when the cops showed up.
Have you ever watched Chris Rock's How Not to Get Your Ass Beat by the Police?
No.
Oh my God, you got to YouTube it.
I'll check
It's
that out.
one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But he gives you these rules, and it's basically making fun of people who do dumb things, right? So one way not to get your ass beat by the police is don't threaten someone with a knife. You know? Like how hard is that? And the funniest one to me, I don't know why it just killed me, but he's like, if the cops have to chase you, when they show up, they're bringing an ass whipping with them. Like you threaten somebody with a knife and the cops show up, like it's not going to end well for you.
Mm-hmm.
But here's another nerdy history moment. The cell phone has changed that whole debate.
God, yeah.
When I was a kid, cops did what they wanted, and it was never recorded, so it was their word against some sort of, potential criminal. The public side with the cops. And we've seen that turn rapidly in the last decade and a half, where now you've got a new civil rights initiative, police brutality. And so many, we would know about George Floyd if you didn't have a cell phone from a bystander.
Mm-hmm.
And there's such a difference in reading it in a newspaper and saying, oh, that sounds terrible. They kneeled on his neck for 9 minutes. Then when you have to watch it. It's
Well, with
excruciating.
that beating in Mulberry,
Yeah,
you could definitely see the demeanor of those cops start to change when they realize they were being filmed.
that is true. That is absolutely true. And he's not happy about it either. He does a little hand gesture or something towards the lady with the with a cell
Get
phone.
back in the car or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
You know what I've always argued, and I'm not a cop, so, they can tell me to stick it, I guess. You should be comfortable with your behavior being on film. I don't want to be filmed constantly. I got to pick my nose sometimes. But you should be comfortable if you're in the public eye of being filmed. And
Yeah.
if you can't do it under film, then you don't need to be doing it, most likely. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I really struggled with that when we first started recording in the classroom because I don't want weirdos trying to say, let's see what these college professors are doing. But then I kind of realized I don't really do anything I think I can't defend.
Dude, I would say based off of my knowledge of you, you're pretty good at just being a devil's advocate
Mhm.
and not saying anything that really is like if anybody says
Oh,
something
yeah.
controversial, it's a student.
Yeah, it is. You know what's funny? I tell them all the time, my job's not to tell you what I think, it's to make you think. I'm going to ask questions. I want you to go home and debate this, and don't get mad at me if you don't like what somebody else says.
Well, you do a super good job too, because I see you on social a lot in the
Mhm.
comments, right? So like Joe Rogan would have this, he would be like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to put that shit out there
Yeah,
in a podcast or a post or share or whatever, and then I'm not going to engage with you
Yeah.
at all."
yeah,
But you engage with people, and I've
Sometimes.
never seen you get mad.
yeah.
I'm sure you have.
Once I remember I was mean to a guy. Okay, when somebody I know is a hypocrite starts yapping, that's when it's hard to hold your temper. So, I hope you don't go back and look at it. I'll just say a guy was railing against programs that I know he had been on. And I just told him, shut up or something. It was
Mm-hmm.
pretty blunt, but it wasn't terrible. That's about the only time I can remember losing my temper. No, I people get bugged when you ask tough questions, but I like talking to you about your ideas, and I really don't get offended. You hate Trump, I love Trump. Let's go out to eat. I don't care.
Yeah,
You're a Catholic, I'm a
100%.
Baptist. Like, I don't care what the other person is. Like, it doesn't keep me from being your friend.
Well, see, like I had people I would call my friends. It would be like over the last few years, it would say things like, "Oh, well,
I've lost friends."
That person's a Trump supporter,"
Yeah,
and I'm like, "Yeah, well, I don't really like. I know, like,
yeah.
I know what you're saying, but they're my friend."
I've lost friends because I don't vote the right way, and I find that bizarre. We simply disagree over how the country should be run. Like, I'm not for sacrificing babies, dude. I'm not for something you can't forgive, I'm for responsible government, and let's move human beings forward. But the end result of it all is you look at it, and we are growing more tribal. We're growing more contentious. We're growing less civil in the greatest nation in the world, which doesn't make sense to me. And it's kind of like rich people problems. We got the time to bicker. If you're trying to struggle for your next meal, you don't have time to do these debates over who'd you vote for.
Yeah,
So
we
we need a wake up call.
Well, and so I wonder if why things are intensifying. Is it because we have more people that are, like they have phones and
Yeah, it's the internet.
or do we have I would say poverty rates have to have gone up, right?
Recently?
Yeah, like in the last 10 years,
Okay.
right? Like with our population growing, you get the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
you got the recession of '08,
Yeah.
so it's to say last 15 years.
Yeah.
You know, is it these transients and people within our society that are making these other group more malcontent, like the
Mm-hmm.
frequency of lower people in the social scale, I
Yeah.
guess you could say that.
Yeah.
I want to say like poor people, but that doesn't really do it justice because, I mean, think about it. Like I know people that work 2 jobs, they can barely pay the bills,
Oh, absolutely.
and it's not because they're whatever. It's
Lazy.
like that they don't make enough money
Yeah.
versus what everything
Yeah.
costs. So therefore, but then it's like, well, they're not lazy. They're not, you know, like what's the issue?
Yeah.
You know, and
Boy, you asked a lot of questions there. I'll approach it just from the last point that you had there. Like, what is the issue with the economy? I think it goes back to it changes too quickly. Capitalism is evolving. And if you don't grab onto the new, you're going to get left behind. You can't do the same job forever. You can't be a truck driver forever.
we saw this with industrialization. I was reading about this with the French Revolution the other day when everybody started making flower bouquets. The original flower bouquet makers were like, you got to do something about these people. They're making bouquets.
Yeah.
Like, this is a very controversial, because, like, what was skilled artisans?
Yeah.
Like, man, on the other side of Jethro Tull inventing the seed drill, you know, like all this rapid changing in agriculture, like the skilled artisans and
Right.
that's something I never really thought about. Like, you get into Orwell and stuff, talking about different classes and the working class.
Yeah.
But man, how much things are impacted by technological evolution over the last couple hundred years.
Yeah. And what jobs are going to be threatened, replaced? People are going to have to change their lives at age 45 because the internet's going to make something else obsolete. How many cashiers have lost their job because of the self-checkout alone? You know, the alarm clock manufacturer is out of business because the cell phone.
I have
taking
kids
that
that
over.
cannot tell time on a clock.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Like, I'll go over, I'll be like, hey, George, as one of the guys that teach, I'm like, watch this. I'm like, can you read that clock over there? And this, like, teenage girl, 14 years old, like, no. Like, it's they can't read Roman numerals, and then they don't know the
cursive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody asked me about that. Are you okay with them not teaching cursive in the schools? And I'm like, yeah, because the keyboard is more important now. And that's where the world's going.
There's another thing about the keyboard.
Yeah, what is that all about?
Well, that's the dude's name.
Is it really?
That made the keyboard. That's the only reason the keys are that way.
QWERTY?
Yeah, QWERTY.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, QWERTY. That's a QWERTY keyboard.
Yeah. I've always thought this is weird because my fingers are resting on something that I don't use that often. Like, why didn't the T and the R, the E down there under the easy ones?
I know. I remember typing. It was a weird thing. Like, I figured it out. And I meet a lot of people, like my dad, my buddy Nate's mom, like, they can't type. Like,
Still.
they can do it kind of fast. And I remember before I took keyboarding, I was around computers enough. I didn't take keyboard until junior high.
Yeah, but you know what's going to happen? Keyboarding's going to disappear. It's going to be talk to text before too long.
Oh,
that's coming soon.
Yeah.
So how long before we don't teach that in schools anymore? Yeah. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have an Apple Watch?
No.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Cora does. And she will be like talking into her watch, or she can also, like, if it's going to be short, she can draw on her watch and send a text and then just, like, go out, like, because you don't have, like, it's not big enough to type on typically.
Yeah.
But she does voice to text or will draw the letters.
I know how you're doing it,
Yeah.
And it's a little frustrating for me.
Well, this is a book you can check out. I still need to read it. The Education of Henry Adams. Ken Burns cites it in
I've had
the
somebody else
Civil
recommend
War.
it to me.
Jeff Woods recommended it to me. I did like the introduction. I just didn't get into it. But, like, basically the thesis is, and it's, I think it's John Quincy Adams' son.
Okay.
It's definitely, like, it's like John Adams' grandson or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But
is Henry Adams the writer? Henry Adams?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But he's talking about, like, how things changing are going to have consequence.
Mm-hmm.
And how, like, what kind of impact it's going to have on human beings. And that's interesting, too. Like, I know a guy that's a historian that's not a historian anymore. And just not engaging with constantly, like with you, some, but you teach your sister too a lot. Like, everybody I talk about ever's dead.
Yeah.
But and then too, you get into the US2 era, Civ2 era, like mutually assured destruction, all that shit. But it's like, now that I'm not mulling over that as much every single day, I'm still listening to 100+ books a year.
Mm-hmm.
Still like typing notes, but it's just like much more around my interest.
Yeah.
And I'm less pessimistic or like just thinking about how everything's going to end, as much, because man, like I feel like in the job you're so much more, it's in your face so much more.
History's depressing.
It really is.
It is.
It really is. I mean, there's some awesome things about it, but at the end of the day, like I had those thoughts all the time, and I don't really struggle with that right now.
That's interesting. Maybe I'll give up my fixation on where we're headed if I stop teaching this stuff, because we're constantly asking that question.
Yeah, that's a little bit of that. Like that's definitely reduced, but then just too, like looking back and man, you look back on all this past and you're like, oh, this doesn't even matter. Like it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
I mean, like this is just such a speck in the scale of time, even for our country, our landmass.
Yeah. We shifted to World Civ. You escaped that, and I don't like it. And one of the reasons why is there's no global expert. Like you're piecing together a lot of stuff that aren't going to be from.
It is all over the place.
Yeah, and I asked my class this because it's not politically correct. But what is the point of teaching you something that gets swallowed by imperialism and it doesn't exist anymore? Kingdoms and empires and big names. And I tell them, forgive me, I'm not going to cover everything equally. I'm going to cover the winners. I'm going to mention the losers, and if you like them, go look them up. And I need to focus on the modern world more than I do the ancient, colonial world. I was like, do y'all get that point? Because I need you to get it, because I don't want you complaining about me. Just saying, why do you give some chapters very little attention? And the answer is because they got crushed.
Hang out with me until World War I. You'll see the bigger picture.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, it is, because I understood that piece after college, actually. Like with being able to look at, because I remember taking Enlightenment, sit down, and like he starts talking about Prussia. I'm like, what the fuck is Prussia?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's like Russia with a P.
Yeah,
like I'm just like, I'm like thinking also, I'm like, that's not on the map. Okay, like where are you talking about?
Yeah.
And but then German unification and like moving onward into World War I and like seeing how the world map was due to colonialism.
Yes.
You ever listen to Blueprint for Armageddon? It's Dan Carlin, Hardcore History.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think it's four or five parts, and they're very long. But he does such a good job. That whole first episode going into Franz Ferdinand. And
that's a guy that I'm so jealous of, because he did the obvious thing that every historian should have done when podcasts came out: go cover the sickest, most twisted stuff, and you'll have a built-in audience.
Yeah.
He doesn't do the development of the internal combustion engine. That dude's out there like Genghis Khan used to boil people alive after battles. And you're like, I'm in.
I'm in. The Assyrian, the torturing of the boats. Yeah, that's the Kings of Kings. Oh, I love that one, dude.
Everybody's got to go watch that, where a king is conquered, brought to the feast, doesn't know it, has served his own son.
That's our Herodotus story too.
Served his own son, and after he eats it, how was it? Do you know that was
Would
Junior?
You want some more?
Yeah. And then they make two sons, another sick king, grind their father's bones into dust.
Yeah.
That's part of their punishment. Oh, dude, the Assyrians were some pretty sick puppies.
Yeah.
Going back to people being disappointed in everything when they talk about how terrible things are. Do you know how bad the 1800s were before there were antibiotics and germ theory?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Do you know how bad it was to live in the Mesopotamian world if, Akkad got mad at you? You're screwed. Sargon gets mad at you.
Like just this, like Dan Carlin talks about this group, but like the Scythians, holy shit. Like I'm scared of the Assyrians, but like the Scythians, they're just going to show up like a horde, like when the Assyrians were falling.
It's the Dothraki.
It really is. It's a horde.
Yeah,
it was a horde.
Yeah.
There's also another one he talks about called the Umumanda or something like that, but it translates as the horde from who knows where.
Oh, wow.
But man, those those are the ancestral forerunners of the Mongols. If you look back in that, steppe tribes.
Yeah.
I don't know a ton about it, but I'm getting into Russian history a little bit. With this beginning of the Tsars, like Ivan onward, with the Civ discussion. But there are issues with trying to quell steppe tribes
Oh yeah.
in the last, few hundred years.
Yeah. They were not that successful either.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. At
Yeah,
all.
just kind of like, oh, we'll just leave y'all alone
Yeah.
type of a deal.
Well, there's still nomads in Russia that follow whatever it is, sheep around, wild animals, and live in the steppe. That still exists. Their Native Americans aren't gone.
Well, the steppe is like, I want to say, isn't it like as expanse as the Atlantic Ocean from
That sounds
from
about
Europe to
Yeah.
North America?
Yeah. That's
Dude, this is
Big
something.
country.
So I'm at communication, like the first transatlantic telegraph cable that got laid.
Yeah.
Like,
Cyrus Vance.
yeah, that's insane to think about,
Mhm.
right?
That's
Like,
a long way, dude.
well, and then like the first one, like, oh, messed up, got to redo it.
Exactly.
Oh man,
Yeah. Can we do big projects like that anymore?
yeah, like the Erie Canal.
The interstate highway system. Can we do what we did in World War II and blow up for a war and build all those bases, or World War One overnight? Are we even capable of that? Like, that's interesting to me. How have we lost our? I think we changed on the margins.
Well, I heard this today. It took like a year and 4 months to build the Empire State Building.
Mm-hmm.
How long would it take us to do it?
Oh
right
my
now?
gosh, yeah. That's the EPA studies. It would take a year and 4 months.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like what they were talking about skyscrapers and bigger buildings going up in Austin and
Yeah.
how long it was taking them,
Wow.
and
Yeah, I heard somebody ask a cool question about the Panama Canal when I covered it. Could we do that today? And I was like, well, sure. We got the technology. He said, no, the environmental impact of joining two oceans. Is there any way that you could do that? And I was like, oh my God, you're right. We would have such a different mentality than they did 112 years ago when they finished that, or it wasn't that long. That's interesting to me, like the difference in the two worlds, and that's not that long ago. From a history teacher's perspective.
back on the Carlin thing, I haven't listened to this one yet, but I'm wanting to for this French Revolution. But he has an episode called Painfotainment,
Okay.
and
Yep.
he basically
I
is
think I've heard it.
getting into exploring the ideas that we turn on the TV, there's violence
Mm-hmm.
like everywhere.
Oh, yeah. He goes back there in the Colosseum. He talks about that. He talks about the guillotine being so popular in France.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that doesn't say much.
Well, and,
good
then
for
it's
us.
like our forms of entertainment now.
Yeah.
Like with where
Cage fighting.
yeah,
Why does it attract us so?
yeah, that's something with my master's thesis I really am interested in a lot is sports nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
Because it touches on so many other things. It's like, well,
Yeah.
why is your country better? Well, because
Yeah.
Japanese people are better than everyone, of
Yeah,
course.
Yeah.
Like, but that sort of sentiment, it's like with the whole idea of the Olympics to me, when
Sure.
you start getting into combat sports, is like, oh yeah, my dude's gonna beat your dude's
Sure.
ass.
It was
then-
many wars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I don't think people really get it, and I pull the age card on you every now and then because when you live it, it just feels a little different. The Olympics were many wars when I was a kid.
Mhm.
And when they put up the medal count, they didn't put up anybody else. They put up USA, USSR. And every now and then they'd put up like Eastern Bloc countries as a group. Because it was somehow the best track stars are going to win the next war, I guess. And it was always this attitude of, do the Soviets, have they engineered something better than what we have? Our guys have to beat them, right? And we took it personal when we lost. And they took it personal when they lost. In their favorite sports or whatever, especially. And I cannot tell you I've ever seen another sports event with the electricity that the Miracle on Ice had. I was 9 years old, and it blew up. And nobody's ever paid attention to a hockey game in Arkansas before or since, but we were all watching that game because this mattered. And that feeling of fighting the evil empire, and David is beating Goliath,
Right.
or Luke is taking on, his father, finally. That's how we interpreted that, man. And I've never felt that with any other sporting event. I'm a big sports fan.
Mhm.
Oh, it absolutely was a mini microcosm of war.
You know what's something interesting? So Ray's coming on the podcast next
Yeah.
week, but he said this a few times. I've heard him say this, 3 or more. And he talks about when Kennedy died
Yeah.
and remembering seeing the funeral on TV.
Yeah.
And he says it's just, I don't know, it sticks out the way he says it. He's like, I'll never forget the sound of those horses' hooves
Yeah.
on the
Asphalt.
Yeah, and he's like, and you can see like he like reflects on it, like he's still hearing it.
Yeah.
But man, that sort of stuff that stands out to us,
Isn't it funny?
these sort of moments, and the Olympics do that, for sure. But like, man, I don't know. I haven't had a president assassinated in my lifetime.
That's true.
But it wouldn't matter who it was or if I voted for him. I'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
there would be a feeling there.
Okay. I don't want to predict it, but aren't we due? And aren't people angry? And I don't care who it is. We're talking about a governor, senator, president. I'm surprised we hadn't had more political violence.
I'm surprised. I'm starting to have more political violence, yes, like that. But look at '68, like the peripherals, the peripheral people that got knocked out. I'm surprised we hadn't seen that, like RFK, Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
I mean, there were that's when really that whole Manchurian candidate theory started.
Okay.
So there's a lot of I think that probably still goes on.
Yeah.
People getting suicided.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't totally buy into the Clintons kill everybody theory at all.
What about Epstein?
Dude.
Not the Clintons, but
Oh,
but maybe the Clintons.
I'll break your heart. I'll break your heart on Epstein. I'm convinced. You know how truth is different than what we think it is.
Yeah.
I don't think the truth behind Epstein is going to be near as interesting as the conspiracy theories. I think he's got some dirt on some powerful people. But I don't think it's the hit list that you think it is, where it's going to be 6 presidents and 8 senators and, the most interesting guy that's been busted so far is that prince that I never heard of from England. I didn't know Prince Philip. I don't know who that dude is. But I don't think the reality of Epstein probably is as sexy as we want it to be, and I hate that for you. So
I'm just like the whole circumstance, like of him getting killed in prison.
Oh yeah,
him being in the jail cell with that super yoked out dude.
Yeah.
That's like a like just gigantic, like former cop or football player or some shit.
I think that smells, but here's the problem: Occam's razor. What's the most likely thing that happened in Epstein's jail cell? We know he died. What's the most likely cause of his death?
Well, strangulation?
I think the most likely is he killed himself.
Huh?
He was taken off suicide watch a couple weeks before. We need an answer to that. Why?
Yeah.
He is a billionaire. He's going to spend the rest of his life in a 12 to 14 cell, possibly getting raped by someone. He's got nothing looking forward to. Like, that dude was on serious suicide watch if he's my president.
Oh, I know. I don't know why they took him off. And then the cameras failing when they did.
Very suspicious. The other two most likely outcomes, besides Epstein did kill himself, is a prisoner killed him or the guards killed him. And both of those are believable, but not as likely as him killing himself. And I'm not saying he did. I'm just saying we jumped to a conclusion there that's not as solid as we think. The fourth one is somebody from outside the prison got in to kill him, and that's hard, much harder to do and conceal and everything. It's more likely he paid a prisoner to kill him, right? But the assumption that there is some grand conspiracy and it's going to unlock everything that we want it to unlock. I don't think that's
Pizzagate scandal is all going to go.
God, yeah.
Well, I mean, but that's really what people are wanting. Like,
Yes,
they're wanting
yes.
I remember when Trump first got in office, and they were talking about this on Joe Rogan's podcast a ton. But all of these articles are running where there had been a human trafficking sting.
It's Q.
And Trump, yeah.
The whole idea behind Q was that he was going to expose some sort of baby trafficking ring, which is a serious issue and needs to be developed, but I don't think there's a cabal within the government necessarily running all of that.
They're in Hollywood. Okay.
Of course they are. Human trafficking is an issue, but man, let's quit making up theories about it and let's dig down and get to the bottom of it.
Well, and I think there probably is a component to it. I mean, look at like the True Detective season 1 plot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is based on a true story.
Okay.
Now they went way over the top with like the darkness side of it, but I do think that stuff goes on. I do think that there are these pagan religious cults that do stuff to kids.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think that exists.
Sure.
Do I have a whole ton of proof for it? No.
No.
But just culturally speaking, there's this whole show about it over here that's really good. I like it. It's very entertaining. But man, that permeates in our conspiracy theories. There are examples. There was one from the 80s where like an orphanage got busted. There was a documentary about it. And they were basically trafficking kids to the orphanage.
Yeah.
And this was in like rural, like Midwest, if I want to say.
Yeah. And I don't doubt that happens. I think when it happens, it's on a small scale, and it's a couple of twisted individuals and a bunch of
Well, like
sick
the Penn
customers.
State thing.
Yeah.
Like, but I also think, like what we said, like people pick up on these things, and you get a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
All of that stuff I just rattled, like they're going to connect the dots on all that.
Yeah.
But you know, there's got to smaller scale or what? There's got to be something behind some of these theories because of how widely they are permeate. But I don't believe that it is like what you say. It's like that. You know, Epstein is going to open the Pandora's box to all that, and
Yeah,
we'll have
exactly.
the answers, and all of the dots will be connected.
If you hear the exact truth about Epstein tomorrow, I think it'll be disappointing. I think it's not going to be as sexy as we want it.
Well,
Now, I'm for hanging everybody that had sex with a 15-year-old. I am for getting rid of those people, and I'm pretty medieval about it. That ticks me off. But here's another thing. You're not dumb. If he takes you out there, I don't care how gorgeous he is, you going to sleep with a 15-year-old? No.
no.
And you're telling me the most powerful people on the planet can't find an escort to sleep with? They needed Epstein to take them to an island and feed them a 16-year-old masseuse? There's
I
not
heard Lady Gaga was there, and Bill Gates, and Tom Hanks.
and Bill Clinton was there. And I'm sure some of them did fall for it. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I don't think that all of the Senate went out there and slept with a girl, and now there's a video of them somewhere.
And
that
there's a
we just,
pizza place in D.C. that's got
Oh,
a portal
stars.
to all of it.
you know, Yeah, I'll be totally political for just a second. I really was hoping when Trump was starting the wall stuff that we would make this about something real. I wish he would have said, I want to stop human trafficking come across that border, and I want to bust the drug cartels, and leave it at that. And that the whole country would have agreed with you.
Yeah.
98% of us would have agreed with you. You could have built your wall. Just quit making it about color. Quit making it about culture. Just say those two things. I want to stop those two things. And we would have said, you're a great president. That's my problem with him, is you didn't achieve what you could have achieved with the issues that you actually said mattered to
Well,
you.
now, arguably, all of those issues are worse.
Yes, and the wall is not going to get built for 20 years because now it's too hot button of an issue. Now people are acting like building a wall is a bad, border security is a bad idea, which means you've gone too far to the left by a long way. What's wrong with saying, I lock my door at night? It's not. We got away from logic somewhere along there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think human trafficking is one of the major untouched social issues of our
Have
time.
you, I've noticed this as traveling recently, been flown a couple times in the last 2-3 months,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe half a dozen times in the last 6 months. But every time I've been in an airport in the last year, if you notice anything out of place,
Yes.
human trafficking is one of the number one.
Yeah.
Like there's like an announcement everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Like you're using the bathroom and you look over and there's a sign about it. If you see anyone
Yeah.
acting suspiciously,
Right.
but man, the frequency of that,
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember ever being as much as
No, it's exploded. But is that the right place? I know it happens, but is there really that much traffic in the airport, or is it really tunnels coming across the border and sick freaks with a trailer up back of a construction site somewhere?
Yeah, if anything, it's our just imagine the people and the drugs and the money that
Mhm.
move across
Mhm.
I-40,
Yes.
just I-40.
Yeah, it's a sad thought, honestly.
I just found out about that all the interstates are numbered and they make sense.
Okay.
Like the ones that run this way are odds and evens,
Yeah,
and this way.
yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
When I had a cool job with the military once, and I got to see FBI reports about crime. And late 90s, there was something like 3 or 4 known cartel gangs in Little Rock. And 10 years later, there was like 17 that the FBI was willing to identify.
You remember early in the 90s, there was that documentary Banging in the Rock? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
on YouTube.
Yeah. No, I lived that. That was when I was in college. And we were all white. And you stayed out of Little Rock. You certainly didn't go to certain
When I was a
streets.
kid, and I told a story on the podcast the other day. My cousin was, I think, 8 years old, and he's 3 years older than me, so I was 5. But I remember him going to the mall on McCain in Little Rock, and there was a shooting there while he was there with his mom shopping.
Mhm.
As a little boy.
Yeah.
And but like that's like all I ever heard about Little Rock was like gang activity and gang
Yeah.
violence, and I don't know. I go there all the time now, and I don't really
But you
feel
stay where you
unsafe.
need to stay. You stay in the touristy parts that the cops pay more attention to, right?
Mhm.
You don't go down the streets that you shouldn't go down.
I wonder. Some people have been talking about like there might be a serial killer in Little Rock.
Oh yeah, serial stabber.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then also, I want to say that the number of homicides for 2022 are higher than they've ever been in the history of the city.
Yeah, it's been spiking for the last few years, and I don't know what it takes to stop that. Somebody somewhere's got to get serious about it. Which again seems like you ought to be able to do in a southern state. You ought to be able to crack down on things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about a bunch of great stuff. We solved no problems.
Okay.
Isn't it weird how we like doing that?
Yes. Yeah.
So therapeutic.
It is.
Really, that's to me. That's kind of what therapy is. Like, you go talk. You go talk to somebody, and like you just kind of get all your life organized out.
Yeah.
Verbally.
Get your problems out there.
And then you're like, okay, well, this doesn't make sense. I don't know. It's like when you get it out, you see it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting though. Like with podcasting, it's like you never really solve any issues. It's always nice having a conversation, but we talked about a bunch of like real social and political issues.
But you know what? I think eventually you'll get there with this thing. Is podcasting is the long form, and Rogan talks about this, and people are starved for that because news is 2-minute in-depth interview. That's not in depth.
When I've told you about this before, like why I have such esteem for Joe Rogan is because he has done something that you and I like. I'm fortunate. I've had 300 episodes or something. Get to talk to a bunch of cool people like you, like historians, psychologists, like just a big smattering of people, business owners, a bunch of authors have been on. Musicians, you name it, but it's like a lot of intellectuals, a lot of professors, a lot of professors.
Oh yeah.
And it's awesome getting that perspective.
I know.
Like that's valuable.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, you'll say something, and I'm going to go home and think about that for days, because I'm going to be like, yeah, I got to go check that out, or I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah. Well, it's like I've listened to a bunch of like Joe's recently. Like I didn't listen to several for a while, but man, he's had some good ones, and it just like rapidly expanded my take on all these things because I mean, it's not just him talking, but it's him talking, sharing his perspective, all these previous guests.
Right.
I mean, they are so good too about like I say better than ever about looking stuff up.
Yeah.
Like Eddie Bravo was just on there talking all sorts of crazy new world order stuff.
Right.
And they're like, hey, look that one up with the 90% thing. Like, I mean, they do a really good job at pulling up articles and stuff. And Jordan Peterson, I saw him on there within the last year, and he like made a mega fuck up in the the beginning, like he conflated a stat so badly about like starvation and
I kind of remember that. And Joe busted him out.
It just busted him out, and then they were like, "Bro, you're wrong about that." And he's like, "Oh yeah," and then they just kept going. Like I was just like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson only eats meat.
Yeah. The carnivore diet?
Beef. Just beef.
Good
beef, salt, and something else.
He's a weird little dude. He's had a lot of health problems.
I
don't know if this is
and his daughter too,
yeah.
and his wife. His wife almost died of cancer, and he got addicted to Xanax.
Yeah. You know what? I'll say this about Peterson. I'll say it about a lot of people. You come out, you make a splash. You were an academic. You were a professor. And then you're in a loop. And now you have to say what your core constituency wants to say to keep making those $1 million.
That's why you're going to affiliate with Ben Shapiro.
Eventually.
He did.
Yeah,
he's on the Daily Wire now.
Right. And Shapiro's another one, really bright guy. But I know when you turn on an episode, I know what you're going to say because you're only going to argue one point of view. One of the funniest things I've ever seen.
With some Judaism sprinkled in there.
Well, that's two things. He plays that down, and he talks about the Judeo-Christian mindset. Because he has to connect with that core audience that is not Jewish, that listens to Ben Shapiro.
Since there's no heaven in Judaism.
He talks a lot about their moral code that is Judeo-Christian. Yeah. So he's playing. But the funniest one with Ben ever was the Ahmaud Arbery shooting. And he plays that and is talking about it. And he knows these guys are screwed because you shouldn't have shot that guy, right? And he doesn't want to say that because the 2A crowd's fixing to go nuts if you just say, okay, these guys are cooked. And he beats around the bush so hard trying to say, in a little bit we're going to get to what I think they might have done wrong. And he never does, of course. He's just trying so hard not to piss off his audience, Because that one was one you look at and like, yeah, you guys are in trouble.
Dude, it would be so, like, for somebody like him being Jewish and in his role.
Yeah.
And the number of Christians, it's like, bro, are you not pissed that they appropriated, like, your entire religion?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, he is.
And he He's never going to talk about that.
Yeah,
The problems
that's super interesting. Like I think about like I mean, I was raised Christian. I went to church for 19 years, like every service.
Yeah.
And I've learned a ton about Judaism since, and got a minor in philosophy. But I just think, I think about it from the Jewish perspective a lot. And I'm like, damn,
Yeah.
like wow, I bet y'all view this in this way.
Yeah. Lewis Black has a hilarious stand-up about that. If you ever watch Lewis Black, I love that guy.
I haven't seen any.
He's
stuff.
Jewish, and he talks about how you've taken our book. He goes, our book wasn't good enough for you, right? He said it was a bestseller by itself, and then he gets into like, we'll explain our book to you. Quit trying to explain it to us. It was ours before you took it and stuck it on, on the front of yours. It is hilarious, and seeing it from a comical Jewish perspective on how you Christians have screwed this up. That guy cusses a little too much for the average public, but gosh, he's so funny. You've got to go watch that special that he does. Oh, man, I can't. I think it's one of his big ones. Is
it on Netflix?
Old Yeller. It's probably off by now. You're probably gonna find it on YouTube, but it's 10 or 15 years old. It's good. Lewis Black is hilarious.
You ever listen to any Mike Birbiglia?
Yeah.
It's funny because I went to DMV the other day, and one of my former students' moms worked there, and she's like, my son Joey used to train with you. And I was like, Joey Bag of Donuts? And she was like, yes, you did call him that. And I was like, Joe Bags, how's he doing? But like Birbiglia had that big skit, like several skits about Joey Bag of Donuts.
Yeah.
Even my students at the college, I would just I always come up with nicknames for people because I can't remember their real name.
Yeah, and they're cool with it.
Yeah, they think they're special now.
All right, good.
There's a guy signed up named Henry. I call him Hank.
Okay.
It was easy. I was like, dude, Hank's way cooler than Henry.
Yeah.
I was like, plus the Beast from X-Men, his name was Hank.
Oh, man. The Beast. That's a good memory from my childhood. X-Men were my favorite.
Dude, the 90s cartoon, like the whole intro to that is totally lit. Like 90s theme songs for cartoons, like Darkwing Duck. Go back and give that a listen.
Yeah, it's pretty much a guitar solo the whole time. Yeah.
I have that same pedal. It's actually the red one right over.
Can you play the X-Men theme?
No, I need to learn it.
Yeah, you do.
I do, because it's sick, and I do have that pedal, and I just found out somewhat recently it's used with that pedal, because it's the same one Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine uses. So.
It's funny, you people who remember that from their childhood are just geeked up about it being on, I think, Netflix now. The whole X-Men series.
Yeah, it was Disney Plus.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, it's they have all of the X-Men. The new ones, the origins, the spin-offs, the cartoon.
Yeah.
Is all on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I've got a ton of those comics. I need to dig them out and see what they're worth.
I think I got rid of all my comics. I was never super into them, but I had like a couple hundred.
Yeah.
And I'm into those Star Wars action figures, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Power of the Force.
I sold all those.
Yeah, you were saying that.
Back when I was younger. Shouldn't have. But that was fun. That is a great story. And it'll never happen again. Lucas told the studio, I get all the marketing rights. And they agreed to it because they thought this movie was going nowhere. And then he made more money off the figures than he did off the movies. Imagine that.
On Netflix is like the toys that made us.
Yes.
They go into like how they made some like the stuff they used for the cloak on the Jawas.
Was a sock. Yeah. But no Hollywood studio is ever going to let a movie keep all of the director keep all the marketing rights again. Everything's got a T-shirt and Happy Meal toys and action figures with it. And it really drove a lot of movies in the 90s. Go back and look. They're trying to find the new Star Wars when they shoot Waterworld. And they're literally trying to create action figures. And it would come out. It would be in Burger King or McDonald's, and then it'd hit the shelves or something like that. But
they did. They even did that with TV shows.
Yeah.
Like what I was like watching on Fox when I was a kid. Jurassic Park. You remember all the? I remember early '90s, so the original Jurassic Park figures coming out.
Yeah, the action figure is hilarious to me because when you were a boy in the '70s, you weren't allowed to play with Barbie, right? And then Barbie had this cool stuff. She had an RV, and my sister had the swimming pool, and you're just like wanting to get in that so bad.
And there's no Batcave in the '70s.
Yeah. And so you'd have to take your GI Joes and then go invade the swimming pool. That's the way it was acceptable to like get into this stuff. And that's literally what Star Wars did. Said boys like dolls too. We just called them action figures. They weren't dolls. And so we got to get them, and we got to finally act out some stuff and have all these cool play sets. And it exploded. Talking about some fist fights in kindergarten over who get to be Luke Skywalker when you brought your action figures.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, oh, man, that whole, like, what that became, because we were talking about timelessness earlier. When I was in junior high,
Mm-hmm.
what year would that? From pre-junior high, actually. That's when they re-released the remastered version in theaters.
Yep.
So I got to see
Awesome.
some of those when I'm like a little kid.
Yeah.
Was seeing them in theaters, and as they did the re-release, I want to say that they released them exactly the same. They might have released them all at once, and
Yeah, I
Kinda
think
back to back.
they did them back to back, I'm pretty sure.
but then like right after all of that was kind of done, episode 1 came out, then
Mhm.
episode 2, then episode 3,
Yeah.
and now look where we're at.
Mhm.
But just how far that's come within my lifetime.
Yeah.
Here's another thing I talk to people like toys and stuff. When I was a kid, you remember the show Johnny Quest?
Yeah.
Like that was old. That was in the 60s.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the original cartoon.
Right.
Like it'd come on around like the time Scooby-Doo would come on,
Sure.
also older.
Yeah.
But then like I loved that Johnny Quest stuff. And
Yeah.
then like they came out with like a couple of movies in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then they started making action figures and came out with the TV show Quest World.
Okay.
And it was about virtual reality. Do you
When
remember
did
this?
that come out? I don't.
Oh, let's look it up. What was interesting is
I may have heard of this. And
I
didn't make the
remember
connection.
just wanting, like being a kid, just like wanting there to be more Johnny Quest,
Yeah.
and they came out with more.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about. You get these my parents' generation were like studio producers, and they had that nostalgia, and they're like, we're re-releasing it.
Yeah.
So
Well, it was a good cartoon. It was a world traveler. It was kind of Dora the Explorer for boys. And so that's why it did so well in the reruns for so long, even though it was a short run show.
let's see here. Yeah, this was like, this is when they would like go into the virtual reality world.
Uh-huh.
That's not what it looked like. This was like they would tap into this VR and they would fight the bad guys there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Quest World, Escape to Quest World. Quest World is the VR, the Kaji right there.
Yeah.
But man, when did this come out?
While you're up there, Google Battle of the Planets. Do you remember this one?
I think I do, actually.
It's probably where Americans found anime for the first time. It was a 70s show that had like these...
96.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Battle of the
that's why I
Planets.
missed it. I was in grad school in 96. Wasn't paying attention to anything. This is a short-lived show, and we all called it Battle of the Planets. The show had another name, and I can't remember what it is.
That's the wiki for it. Battle of the Planets, American adaptation of Japanese anime series Science Ninja Team
How cool is that?
Gatchaman.
Yeah. So it was popular over there. They adapted it for American television. Had a pretty short run, maybe 2 or 3 years. It was great. And it was so far ahead of its time. And it was kind of like a Star Wars before there was Star Wars.
56 episodes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That surprised me to have that many. But it has this
Wait,
cult
that's
following.
that's a soundtrack, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. It has a cult following. And they had this major ship, and it was split into like 4 or 5 parts. And one of them was a motorcycle, one of them was a spaceship, and one of them was a ATV, you know. And different people would go drive the different ones. And it cracks me up, like, we love this so much, and they couldn't figure out what to do with it. And they didn't make a movie until like 20 years later. Like, totally missed a marketing opportunity. That's the first anime most American kids watched.
Yeah, no, I've never even heard of that. That's
Yeah.
wild.
It was a pretty good little show.
I was thinking something else, to be honest. Like I was
Way
thinking
ahead of
about
its
like
time.
it's almost like when I saw Avatar for the first time. You know
Yeah.
how they're in the suits. Like
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, there being a cartoon where like people were like basically inside of these robots
Yeah.
fighting each other. It wasn't Transformers or anything like that.
Yeah.
But see, I really missed out on Transformers, He-Man. Transformers was big in the early
Mid-eighties.
'90s.
Oh.
Still, like some of the reruns,
Oh,
like
yeah.
I was checking them
Yeah.
out. But
Those are all like 84, 5, 6, 7. Like you had Transformers, G.I. Joe. What was the one you said?
what did I just say?
No, you said a third one. And Thundercats.
Oh, Thundercats.
Came out back to back. He-Man.
He-Man, yeah.
He-Man was probably first on those.
Okay, so I remember seeing this when I was a kid, but they made This is it. Karate Commandos.
Oh my gosh.
Chuck Norris did this himself.
Yeah.
This would have been like 86 is when it came out. But they had a whole action figure line.
That's kind of
right.
sad.
And I remember seeing this. It was like several little episodes.
Yeah.
But it's all about like crime syndicates.
The Deadly Dolphin.
Yeah.
I need to see that one.
Like I remember renting this from the movie store when I was a kid. Let's look at the action figures. But the action figures are actually pretty sick looking. Like if you ever wanted
I do want
a Chuck Norris action figure when you were a kid, right? Like that reminds me of like him in like all of his movies.
A terrible actor who spun a martial arts career into mega enterprise. How many different successful iterations of Chuck Norris are there?
On the jokes.
Yeah.
Like, what a cultural
fantastic.
icon.
Yeah. To this day. And, Walker, Texas Ranger, a departure there, but it worked, and dude couldn't act in a single one of those. I'm sorry, but it's true. But we just love him. Like there's something about Chuck Norris, that you just dig.
I'm like growing up. I tell people this. I remember when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Like Walker Texas Ranger, when I first came on, was like super early, like 5:30.
Okay.
And then man, I just like would watch it, and it's like, oh, next Saturday.
Yeah.
Like I can't wait. And then they kept moving it a little later, but it was okay because it'd be like, oh, we'll watch Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and then we'll watch Walker.
Yeah.
Like, and then it was like, well, Walker's got a spin-off show now. But like by the end of it, it was like Walker was on like 9 to 10, and like I just remember being pissy as a little kid. I'm like, this shit used to come on at 5:30.
Yeah.
Like I gotta wait till 9 o'clock. And my parents made me go to bed right after it's over. Like I just know the whole time I'm watching, I gotta go to bed after this.
Right.
But yeah, that really was a big part of culture.
Don't you think Netflix and company have screwed up by releasing a whole season at once? Because
yes.
HBO's doing the opposite.
HBO does the opposite.
And you buy it because you want to see it, and then it gives you something to wait on. And you have this Sunday night date. Every Sunday night we're going to watch the new Game of Thrones episode. And letting us binge it means I'm done in one week.
Did Stranger Things release?
I think so.
I think it released all. Yeah, you're right. Netflix is unique in doing that.
And you get a lot of them. Ozark, dumping a whole season on you.
Well, like Mandalorian, that was a weekly release. So Disney's doing weekly release. HBO's doing weekly release. And Amazon with Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
Dude,
I think that makes more sense.
That show, I'm just going to tell you the basic premise. You remember the White Witch and like
Galadriel?
Yeah.
I know that.
It's all about her.
Yeah. Which makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's also smart, goes back to my thesis. Don't try to continue the same thing and just beat the horse to death. Do a spinoff that's still in that universe, but it doesn't really rely on moving the central plot forward. I think that's so smart.
Apparently some of the spinoffs they're doing, like Disney, are going to be animated.
Yeah.
So, for Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Oh, that's tough. Game of Thrones seems so rated R.
Two of the Game of Thrones spinoffs are going to be animated.
Wow.
Is what I read. One of them's a maybe, but the other one's apparently for
Is
sure.
it adult animation? Like, are you going to be gearing this towards kids?
Well, I wondered about that because, like, I know a ton of adults that watch the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I don't know.
It seems like it limits you. It's also cheaper, though. It's got to be a lot cheaper to do the anime.
Yeah, I want to say I saw, like, wherever I was reading all of these spinoffs, might have been on, like, the HBO website. Like, I was like, oh, wow, this is, like, it's talking about what was in development, what was for sure happening. There's, like, a graphic that had the different shows on them. And I'm trying to...
Have you read that book this is based on, Fire and Blood or something like that?
No.
It's pretty good.
The House of Dragons based on?
Isn't it based on?
Dance of Dragons?
No, it's based off of something he wrote that's like a 300-page history, and it reads differently, but it's a book that he's released.
Maybe Dance of Dragons is a chapter in that book because they're saying that this season is like I'm in some of the groups on social and they're talking about it being all from they keep talking about the Dance of Dragons.
Yeah.
Dance of Dragons. What's interesting too that they've done with this. So like this is this girl Rhaenyra now.
Mm-hmm.
The episode that comes out this week, this is going to be her.
Oh, cool.
So they've already, even from episode 2 to 3, they fast forwarded like 3 years.
Okay.
right? Like, just move the story
Yeah.
forward, and they do that again in this episode,
Yeah.
and this girl goes from looking like that to looking like this.
Man, that dude is just so creative. I'm so impressed with him.
Yeah, I want to see about this animated series real quick, though.
There it is.
2 more animated Game of Thrones spin-offs in development. This wasn't the site I read this. The site was like breaking down all of the different ones, but I thought the same thing as you. I'm like, how are they going to do this any justice? And I wonder if that's even any of the artwork off of it. But how are they going to do it any justice, or like make it like, what is it going to be for kids? Like,
yeah. Well, that's what doesn't make sense to me. Game of Thrones is not for kids. Don't let your kids watch that.
yeah. Oh, dude, just like the very that's
Mhm.
another thing about this. Like, and I mean, it's the way things were. Like, I was joking about the queen being married to her cousin earlier,
Yeah.
right? But that first episode,
Yeah. Blows you away.
I rewatched it the other day. But like Bran getting pushed out,
Yeah.
and,
The twins
yeah,
being naughty. Dude, I've told so many people, watch the first episode. You'll know if you want to continue. That's a show that you don't have
dude,
to
that's like.
wait around.
You ever watch Bite Mirror?
Yeah.
The first episode
Yeah.
where that the guy has sex with the pig. Spoiler alert.
I don't remember that.
I woke up from a nap and Cora was watching that, and like I literally woke up to this dude like having sex with a pig in
Oh
my
my
living room, and I
gosh.
was like, "What are you doing?" And then like 3 months later, I'm like, "This Black Mirror show was so sick."
I don't remember that.
The
scene.
very first
I gotta go
episode,
look at
it's
it.
set in Great Britain, like in London.
Mhm. Oh no,
The
they
politician,
make him do that.
he like they
blackmail
think
him.
like his
Yeah.
daughter's gonna get or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
He has to have sex with a pig.
Yeah. That's terrible.
But like we were talking about Oculus Go and stuff earlier, like the
Mhm.
episode where he's like rewinding the stuff in his mind. I was thinking
Mhm.
about that, and apparently the show creator of Black Mirror was like, "I'm not doing this anymore," because like what we're talking about with history, like he's like, it puts my mind in places,
Yeah.
and like I just speculate about the future, and it's not therapeutic.
One I love, and it's not the best episode, is where they have people vote on social media for who do you want to kill. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And then after everybody participates, spoiler alert, they send out some like little mini drones who kill everybody who bothered to vote because you're an asshole. Right? You just
Yeah.
voted to kill someone.
Yeah.
So you've all been targeted. You're about to get zapped. And I was like, that's where I worry about crime kind of going more technologically savvy in the future.
Okay, so you know where Coal
Fine.
Hill, Arkansas is?
I do.
It's between Clark. If it's on 40, it's
Yeah.
between Clarksville.
I've seen the sign.
But it's on 64 highway also. It's very
Okay.
small, very methy.
Nice.
Yeah. Like a lot of my family's from Hartman. My dad and mom just rebuilt their house like a couple miles from there. I got an aunt and uncle that live in there. And the other day I was reading this article, and Coal Hill is like a couple of cops. But they're like, oh, we're chasing this suspect on foot, and, had 3 officers out and drone in the sky and dogs. And I'm just like, damn, Coal Hill PD throwing up a drone.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's like
Oh.
rural Arkansas.
I should have led with this. I read a lot of military stuff. I'm not talking about top secret or anything. I'm talking about stuff you can find on the internet. But you get a little deeper than the average just, BS. The story in the Ukraine is being driven by drones. And there's some fascinating technological developments that's going to change warfare forever. Because the technology is so good now, I can hand throw a drone and then control it. And when you're hiding behind that, bunker that I can't shoot through, 200 yards up there, my little drone can fly over the hill and drop a grenade on your head.
Or flamethrower you. Like, have you seen those ones that
Yeah.
like burn the brush and stuff with?
Absolutely. Dude, there's some good articles written about that out there, about how the military is learning things that they didn't even know they needed. The next big war is going to be so much different than the last. Because what you're seeing right now is a war that we've never seen before. That's one reason the Ukraine shocked Russia. Drones are not that expensive. You can manufacture a drone for $100 that can do a lot of damage. And so they'll take off and drop a charge or something like nature, or just surveil. Just look and see where things are from, 300 feet up in the air.
During the French Revolution that the first hot air balloon was used.
Yeah.
But imagine
right.
for reconnaissance.
Yeah.
But look how far we've come. Like that would be day one in aerial warfare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every war has had a technological breakthrough that changes things. And you're seeing one of, I think, the bigger ones in history in the Ukraine, and we're not really getting that story. You get so many other things coming out on major news. But behind the scenes, when you kind of look into it, that's one that veterans are saying, this stuff's whack. We didn't have this in Iraq, 15, 16 years ago. Like, you didn't have a drone flying around doing the damage to those.
What do you think is going on with Putin? A lot of speculation with his health and cancer and.
Oh, I think he's probably has some health problems. We'll never know, so I don't bother with it. I think that's the most dangerous man on the planet. I cannot believe Americans are cheering him. That Tucker Carlson gets on there and says, maybe Putin's right. Maybe I want Russia to win the war. He said that on the air. What? Russia is Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers, dudes. That's a bad man. The average Russian may be okay, but Vladimir Putin's an evil dude.
You ever listen to, I've listened to him on Joe Rogan, but I've listened to the show a time or two, Jimmy Dore?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on him?
Oh, I don't remember enough to have an opinion.
I was listening to some of his commentary, like just in passing, on Ukraine, and he was also playing some clips of Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, and like his commentary on it. But it's kind of like the usual sort of story of the United States. Like, Zelensky's in there because we put him in there, and we're going to keep him in there at all costs, was basically what he was saying.
Yeah. I think there's something to that. Zelensky, I would vote for president right now. That dude had the most badass line since King Leonidas. I don't need a ride, I need ammunition. Holy cow. And we were trying to get him out. Yeah. We offered to take him out of the country, and he's like, no, I'm staying. Who stays in harm's way? I know he's in an undisclosed location, but man, what a debut. Now, Ukraine is probably the second most corrupt country in Europe after Russia.
That's another, like, there's some layers to this where it's not just like
they're not perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I got to salute the effort they're giving, man. David's taking on Goliath and winning right now.
Yeah.
You're seeing it. And they ain't giving up, and professional prize fighters have put their flight vest on.
Bobachico.
The Klitschko's.
The Klitschko's. There's one more, too.
I don't remember his name. Is it Ledbedev?
I can't remember. I'm not as familiar with him, but yeah, there's like there are combat sports.
Ukraine's putting up a hell of a fight, but I'm stunned by the people who act like maybe Putin's okay.
I don't think that at all.
He is 69 years old, so he ain't gonna last forever. But since the day they fell, he wants to rebuild the Soviet Empire. The biggest chunk of the Soviet Empire, at least in importance, is Ukraine. I think Kazakhstan's actually bigger geography. And he can't let it go. It's also got seafront footage, which Russia has too little of in their mind.
That's always been a narrative with them since Peter the fucking Great.
Exactly. Which is a fascinating point about that biggest country on the planet is it's largely landlocked, which is really strange.
Yeah.
The end result of all that, though, I don't see it being good because Putin's not going to go down easy. PBS Frontline does some really good reporting.
I'm about to just start donating to PBS so I can get all their stuff for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got the app and like I watch stuff on there. But man, I buy stuff from them all the time.
Yeah.
2015, and I digitize some of the stuff so I can give you access on my cloud if you want. But tons of documentaries.
Yeah.
But man, they did one in 2015. Might have been 2018. I think it was because they were talking about stuff 2015 in the beginning, but on the reconstruction. Right, and it is super good. It's a 3-part documentary, and it's really, man, I think what we need. There's so much done on the Civil War, and books.
Nobody wants to talk about Reconstruction.
But man, their thesis on this is really good.
Okay.
And like they start off talking about like that shooting at Mother Emanuel Church. In 2015, and like they start talking about all kinds of events like that, like this is an all-white church, and they trace the roots all the way back to the Reconstruction period.
Wow!
I was just in Memphis the other day. I ate at BB King's, the ribs there, fire. But it's on Bill Street, and we drove past it and like parked in this parking garage. But when we left, we pulled out and we kept going, away from Bill Street and got out that way. But I passed the Memphis Massacre monument marker, which even, I want to say in the Arkansas Encyclopedia, they call that a race riot.
Yeah.
Right? But Memphis, New Orleans, and maybe St. Louis. I can't remember on St. Louis, though. But Memphis, New Orleans for sure, right after the Civil War. I think Memphis was 66.
Okay.
All of the black schools, churches, rapes, like it burned. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was because of... these former slaves that had fought for the Union were coming back home.
Oh, wow.
right? And it's like 1866.
Yeah.
So, but in the history books, like I noticed this, like it's called a race riot a lot of times. When it's like, where was the riot of the races, right?
Yeah.
Like, you mean the white people were rioting? Like,
Yeah.
you know, but man, after World War II, race riots. Or not World War II, World War One. Right, you get that's when you get Tulsa, Elaine,
yeah.
Which is a little but labor, like it was rooted in the same sort of stuff. We want more rights because we just went and fought and died, you know, and now we're back here starving again. But man, that is it's rough.
Cherry history's depressing.
And we were, man, especially for like minority groups.
Oh, no question.
Right, like
why is that so hard for people to say?
Yeah.
But I would argue this, to be a contrarian, we're equal opportunity screwers. Like, who got a good deal? Like, everybody's had to come over here and work their ass off and get abused, and not to the same degree. Obviously, you know, there's chapters that are worse than others, but
sadly for us,
who had it great?
Sadly for us.
Don't say it.
Do you own your house?
Not well. I'm buying it.
Oh, me too.
Okay.
We're gonna say we own it.
Okay.
We, sir, are white. Landowning men.
Yes.
It's the best spot to be in. for like there was a time,
you know,
when that was like 1830. Like that
Yeah.
was it. Like you have it made. Like you're the only person that can vote.
Yeah. Now you don't have it made because Irish are working their yayas off on the railroad, right? A student busted me out the other day. I was trying to make the point that you can largely, the Brian Wilson thesis, you can make your own world, right? And I was asking, what does it take for success? And granted, like, your parents being rich when you're born is a big part of this.
That would be nice.
A lot of it you can improve. Your looks, your personality, your intellect, your skills, your education. And this girl goes, white males. And I was like, okay, that's not what I was going for, but look at the picture of the U.S. presidents. They're all dudes. One of them was minority, the rest white. Like, I can't really argue with her, right? Like, there is some access to power that's not open to other people. You got to own that. But I don't like this idea that just gave you a free union card. Because plenty of people work their fingers to the bone in poor little mud huts, and they were white, you know. But, yeah, I don't know why it's so hard for Americans to say that racism is real.
Well, like, you know, I went down a big nativism rabbit hole like a year ago. Gangs of New York, so good, right? Like that's like what I was talking about earlier. Like I would love to, and I did a bunch of like compiling of like documentaries with like Scorsese interviews, like brought everything in so I could crank out a review and put some content out. I do a podcast, but man, like how your Know Nothing Party and your Free Soilers, like there was like kind of some evolution of these peripheral parties that really grew into the Republican Party.
If you remember, a historian named Richard Hofstadter did a lot of work on that.
Dude.
Seminal works. So he's drinking the populist William Jennings Bryan and on down the list to...
What is his book, dude? I have, like, his main book. I read that in grad school.
It is The Nature of Agrarian Revolt. Is that it?
Maybe.
And that's the one, I think it's from something to William Jennings Bryan is the... subtitle.
Let's see.
A lot of folks say he's a racist. Everybody's a racist, by the way.
Works. Yeah, he's got a few things. Let me see if I can make that bigger.
Published works. That UB Phillips stuff. Oh my gosh.
Paranoid style. Died of leukemia. Damn. Okay. Where were you seeing? Age of Reform. That's the one I've read.
Okay.
From Bryan to FDR.
That's it. From Bryan to FDR. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I took a class 14 to 45.
Was the
that
class
came
that
up
you
in?
took?
Yeah. U.S. History 1914 to 1945. I took like all of those classes, like the Gilded Age, in the Progressive Era. That was a class. But yeah, man, I knew when you said Hofstadter, that was one of the readings.
Yeah, that's a big book in American history.
Yeah. Man, the readings in classes I took, I really enjoyed those.
I know.
And what I really enjoyed is I had this one professor in my bachelor's that was like, man, he's so hard, like on making you write book reviews. I read 4 books in his class, and I'm like, dude, this is the 3,000 level frontier class, bro.
Uh-huh.
Like, literally, I didn't take a grad class as hard as his, but those grad classes weren't as hard because I was awesome at writing book reviews
Yeah.
because of his class.
Yeah.
And that's another reason I want to do the blog, is because I feel like I do write good book reviews, but
Okay.
I don't really have anything published.
Yeah.
Because, like, man, like, I got out, and then I was doing the gym, and then I started teaching, and I was like, literally the number of times they told me, like, we don't want you to do that stuff. Like,
Yeah.
just teach the class and
Yeah.
go home. Like, research, we're not a research
Right.
institution.
Right.
Like, Marilyn told me that a couple of times. We're not a research institution. Because I was, like, improving my class, you know, or wanting to go to a conference or whatever.
Oh, God. Yes.
But it was like, I told Woods, one of my mentors, that, and he was just like, who says that?
Oh, every community college in Arkansas
Yeah,
says that.
and but, you know, he's went to, like, Ohio State.
Yeah.
And,
It's
but
a different mentality. It's a different job.
totally.
It is.
I mean, really, like, in hindsight, it's not a high school, but it's too closely linked because of its proximity and, like, how the funding model works on getting paid more per high school student that you have.
Will you teach again?
Probably. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how much satisfaction I get of doing the history podcast.
Okay.
So
You don't want to adjunct at Tech?
I probably would, but
Yeah.
man, everybody I know is leaving tech.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Exodus.
People I never thought would leave teaching are leaving teaching.
Okay.
And I don't even, everybody's got their own reasons, but
Yeah. COVID jacked everything up. And you know that you have a real interesting arc because you saw enough of it before COVID, and then you got hit with a great pivot.
yeah, well, to see it, that first year was, 4 years. The first 2 years, COVID hit during that second year for me.
Yeah.
But that whole first year was just like, creating content, getting my lectures, like creating tests, revising things, like going through new hire orientation still for the first 6 months, like having to do meetings and stuff. And then, oh man, it's just like when we went to the digital, and it's like the teetering back and forth, not knowing if you're going to work. Oh, my wife's got it. And two, how much it flopped from, okay, your wife has it, like, don't come back here. Like, don't even talk to anybody.
Right.
Stay in your home. Don't do anything.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, your wife's got to come to work.
Yeah.
Like how we pivoted on that.
Yeah.
But
Unless
yeah,
you have a fever, then stay home.
yeah,
Right.
it's symptomatic. But that, and then too, like how at the very end they were just like, and I know some professors are still doing it, and I still did it sometimes, but they're like, you can't stream your class.
Yeah.
They got to come to campus. But then again, it's like, dude, I don't want to be a part of a system that makes decisions based off the check the government's going to give them.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's all that's going on.
I don't know how you avoid that if you work for the government, though. That's American life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did get 200 books, roughly, from Woods.
Oh, yeah?
Left. I cleaned out his office.
Nice.
And gave me a guitar over there, too.
Okay.
And it's not from Persia, but I've always called it the Persian knife.
Cool.
His letter opener, bro. It's actually very sharp.
That thing's brutal.
You can hold it if you want.
So you keep it in your office, you call it letter opener.
I actually poked myself with it earlier.
And you assault people with this thing.
Yeah, I was like, dude, I opened something with the Persian knife. And he was like, it's more like Jordanian. I'm like,
Now,
whatever.
what was the purpose of this? Do you know? Oops.
I don't know. Don't know.
I wonder if it's ceremonial, if it's maybe holding something from ancient Sumer right there.
Yeah, could be.
Some
Got it in
serious-
a Hobby Lobby.
The Syrians may have used it for some.
Yeah, man. Well, dude, bro, it's been great
I know.
catching up. We'll have to, it sucks we didn't do this sooner, but also,
Yeah.
this is how we can stay in touch.
Yeah.
And that'd be great seeing you. Dana's been on the podcast. Be
Oh,
great
really?
seeing Ray again next
I
week.
haven't seen Dana's. I'll go see it. I've watched it with Justin. I've watched it
Dana
with
was a
Tom.
little awkward.
Yeah.
I get he probably never done anything like
No.
this.
No.
Like you're perfectly natural. You were perfectly natural right now.
Right.
You were crushing it. But Dana was like literally like, and one of his former students said this to me.
Yeah.
This like 28 years old now, but it was almost like he was Ricky Bobby, dude. I was like, Dana, like philosophy, consciousness, like you're talking to him, and he's just like, yes. Like, I mean, it wasn't that bad, but it's like you could tell he was out of his element.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and some people do this. As soon as the podcast went off, it was normal Dana again.
Ray is going to be great at this.
Oh, I know. I told Ray, I was like, what record are we going to listen to?
First of all, that guy has had like 16 lives. I don't know what all, but okay, I'm going to
Road Dogs Runner.
give you a little history of Ray. He grew up very poor in southern Arkansas, knows a lot about that, and I got a story for you in just a second. And then leaves the military at the end of the Vietnam era, so that, that's how he went to college. Worked his way through college, was a radio host down there. He's got some
That's
great
why he loves the
stories.
studio.
And he's a music marathon. Plus 32 years in the U.S. Army Reserves with me. And that's how I met him. That's how I first met Ray. And now he's a chair of the Master Gardeners in the county.
Yeah.
He just goes from project to project to project, and he's a curious dude. And it never ceases to surprise me. You'll say anything, and he knows something about it. The history of bottling. You're like, how do you know that? We were talking one day, and we were talking about people rolling cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, there's a dude in my neighborhood that could roll them with one arm. One arm Henry could just roll a cigarette with. And I was like, well, wait, this guy's name is what? And he's like, One Arm Henry. I'm like, okay, he got his arm cut off in some sort of accident, so you just call him One Arm Henry. How horribly politically incorrect is that? But that's what you do in the South. You name people, after the word on the
He
middle
probably
of the forehead.
liked it.
And Ray starts dying laughing because he's like, I've never thought of that before.
Oh, man.
Everybody in the neighborhood calls this guy One Arm Henry, but he can roll a cigarette with one hand like nobody's business.
I saw a guy, this blew my mind. That's a real thing. I saw a guy roll a blunt
Yeah.
with one hand was broken.
Yeah.
And it was from the breaking the full blunt apart, emptying it out, rolling it. Just like that. And
Did
I'm
it
like,
all.
dude, I can't even do one with two hands, bro. You just blew my mind.
Yeah.
That's an art form. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've ever tried to roll
No, I haven't actually.
cigarettes or whatever. I've never done cigarettes, but it
Yeah.
I'm just
I've heard people talk
fumble
about
fingers, dude.
it. Yeah.
I like how they play on that in True Grit. Maddie's rolling a cigarette for
him.
Rooster.
Yeah. And he appreciates
Give me
it.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to do a list. Greatest Westerns ever.
Oh, dude, hey, yeah.
Yeah.
And if ever a good Western comes out, you want to review it, because I do a spin-off of shows after the show,
Yeah.
where I've done one most recently on Ken Burns' Civil War.
Yeah.
So we'll
Isn't
review
there-
movies.
Isn't there a big one coming up? That's highly anticipated. Oh man, I'm lost in my mind.
No, there is. There is, and I can't remember what the plot is or anything about it, but there is a Western coming out.
I love the genre, and I'm so sorry it's almost dead.
Appaloosa, that was a
great
good one.
Great
And then
one.
310 to Yuma, both those came out the
Yeah.
same year.
And the remake of True Grit, I thought was masterful.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I would
was
show
that
it.
a Coen Brothers film?
Yes,
it was. That's
Um,
why it's masterful. God, how good are they?
There was another. This one came out earlier 2000s, but The Missing.
Yeah,
With,
yeah.
Tommy Lee
I
Jones.
loved it.
Oh,
I
love it.
loved it.
Well, Lonesome Dove's one of the greatest. The first one,
Yeah,
one of the greatest movies ever.
absolutely. If you can call it a movie, it's a
Yeah,
miniseries.
it's a saga.
6 hours long.
Yeah.
But also one of the best characters ever in an American Western film with Duvall. And
Augustus McRae.
oh my gosh, she was born to play that role.
Yeah.
Born to play it.
I remember being a kid and just idolized that movie.
Yes,
I watched it
yeah.
with my grandpa all the time, core memory.
Right.
And I remember saying to my parents, I'm like, "What's a poke?"
Oh, okay.
Because remember he's like,
Yeah.
"All right, Lori, we're
Yeah.
gonna cut these cards for a poke."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What's he mean?" And I'm 6, 7 years old or something, and this stuff like that
Right,
about it too. I
right.
mean, because I was a little kid watching it. But dude, I remember we'd always get to the third part, and I'd always be like, "Oh, just stop right around here," because I never wanted to see Gus die.
Oh, okay.
Because the whole fourth part, Gus is dead. So I'm
Okay.
like, part 4 is shit.
Yeah.
I'm a little
Yeah,
kid.
yeah.
It's we don't watch part 4.
Right.
Every now and then we'll watch it, but it's
Right.
terrible.
Yeah. That is a nearly perfect show.
Oh
It's
yeah.
fantastic. So many good characters, so many good actors.
I like the one they did, Comanche Moon,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
they had several famous people in it.
Val Kilmer.
Mm,
was,
yeah,
yeah.
wow.
That's a good book.
One of his last talking roles, probably.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I love Val Kilmer. I think he's so underrated. That author does some serious, McMurtry, does some pretty serious history.
When his son is a singer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've listened to some of his stuff.
I
I think
think
Ray
he-
turned me on to it.
Yeah, no, you were
Yeah.
saying Ray earlier, and that popped in my mind. Probably what we're talking about. Yeah.
The about the same. Well, when I read Comanche Moon was only about 2 or 3 years ago, and the next thing I saw was that book on Comanches that Rogan's had the guy on about how brutal their empire was. And Comanches torture people to death for fun, and were some of the best horse soldiers ever. And I go back and look at Comanche Moon, and it is so historically accurate. That's what those Rangers were fighting and losing to often.
Yeah, Empire of the Summer Moon with Wynn.
That's it.
It's super. I've listened to it a couple of times. As a matter of fact, I may have moved it, but hold on. Yeah, right there.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, that came up on accident, dude. I didn't even. I hit C and it just pulled up.
Mhm.
This is the map from Wynn's book of Comancheria.
Okay.
Oh, what happened? But yeah, Comancheria.
Brutal.
Yeah. Well, Wynn says something in this. He goes, Adobe Walls. That's in Lonesome Dove. He said people sitting around a campfire in present day Oklahoma City couldn't wrap their minds around the fact that a Comanche warrior sitting around a campfire in present-day Houston was a serious threat to them.
Mm.
Like, they would talk about, like, just how they could go from, like, a place like Denver to anywhere. And, like, they would just ghost. Like, you couldn't follow them.
Yeah.
Like, you could never make it that far.
Live off the land too easily.
Well, remember how they talking about, like, if they had a horse diet where they would just take buffalo intestines and put them around their neck. And when they would start riding and, like, get super hungry so they wouldn't stop, they would suck the intestine out.
Nice. You're hardcore if you do that. That's like Genghis Khan Mongol stuff, right?
Well,
there,
and then,
right?
too, this is another one that stood out from that book. They would be sitting around the campfire and pick lice out and like pop them in their teeth and then throw them on the fire. Wild. Yeah.
Cora blowing you up?
She's asking about dinner here. Cleaning up. We draining our hot tub today. I'm doing a big patio at the house. I got this custom-made fire pit, like a laser cut.
Cool.
Really nice for Cora's birthday. I've been digging out a fire pit, and she's chemical treating the hot tub, and thoughts on dinner, and Jerry Bruckheimer's nephew, Sandy, who's been on the podcast, he wants to come hang out in the hot tub. What you do with the numbers on the mailbox that you got at Lowe's, stuff like that. We talked about this before.
It's constant.
Yeah. Well, dude, let's go ahead and wrap it up, man.
Right.
But I really do appreciate you taking the time, bro.
So good to see you.
Yeah, same. Missed getting to hang out and do just exactly this, because that was one of the perks of the job. Was, getting to hang out with you and Ray, really, and Dane too. Tell Dane I said hello if you don't mind. I see Ray, so
yeah.
Anyway, all right, people, signing off.
Take care.